Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience.
Kira woke up to the sound of the alarm clock. She struggled to open her eyes. Her hands were longing to press pause on the alarm clock and sleep for another half hour. Her lack of sleep continued year after year. The noise outside kept her awake, or the neighbors were having a party at night. When she turned to the other side, she remembered her main pain. Her husband didn't come home for the night again. His place is empty. This too went on year after year. Kara got out of bed and headed for the kitchen. Her youngest daughter Lucy was already sitting there. It was obvious that Lucy hadn't had a good night's sleep either. "Mommy, can I stay home today?" "Why?" Kira asked curiously. "I didn't sleep well. I have a headache." "I could sleep another hour," Lucy said. "I didn't sleep well either. I want to stay home too. But who's going to go to work instead of me?" "Do you think I'm working so that you can skip classes at your own discretion?" "Mom, you can skip a day too. They'll take care of it without you. We'll sleep together." Lucy walked over to her mother and hugged her from behind as well. Kira poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. It would be nice to live in a spacious house, away from those noisy neighbors and noisy highways. You fall asleep in the evening and wake up in the morning to birdsong instead of the annoying ringing of the alarm clock, Kira dreamed aloud. Lucy liked the idea, and that the house should be 3 stories high, with its own basement and attic. There should be a big vegetable garden with perennial trees, behind which not a single living soul could be seen. And also that there was a river not far away. Above the river hangs a high rock, from which begins a bridge to the other side. And on the other bank there is a dense forest. There lie elves and other fairy tale characters. Lucy continued her fantasies in unison with her mother and could not stop. "Hey, beautiful, stop dreaming. Make yourself some cocoa and then get ready for school." Kira interrupted her daughter and instantly returned to reality. "Didn't Daddy come?" Lucy asked cautiously. "No, he didn't," her mother replied. "John didn't come home last night either," Lucy added. "I know. Your sister Sophia's been out all night too," Kira added. "So, Mom, you and I are the only ones who sleep at home all the time." "Maybe we're crazy," Lucy asked her mother. "Don't you start with me, my daughter, or my heart won't stand it and I'll die. And you'll all stay out all night," said Kara. Lucy made herself some cocoa, kissed her mother on the cheek, and ran to her room to get ready for school. Kara watched her youngest daughter and realized that she had grown up considerably, judging by her jokes. "Maybe you and I are crazy." What a deep hint lies in that joke, Kira thought. She went back to the bedroom and began to slowly pack to take her daughter to school. But the idea of a big house away from civilization kept her on her toes. It would be good to realize it. Then maybe her husband, grown son, and grown daughter wouldn't be able to stay so often unknown overnight. Or they would have to make their own choice. Live in a remote village with a permanent overnight stay at home, or move away from the family and spend the night anywhere. These were just Kara's morning thoughts at that point. Kara drove her daughter to school, then came to her office. After sitting in her office for a bit, she realized that she was in no condition to work today. On her desk is a large stack of papers that she has to check and sign today. She looked at this stack and a protest rose up inside her. Every single day is spent struggling with these papers, and at home it is the same picture. This is the time when life goes by. It all seemed unfair to her. Kira decided to do something today that she had never done before. She took a marker and a blank piece of paper. With a slight movement of her hand, she wrote a couple words in large letters and placed them on the stack of papers. Then picked up her purse and left the office without looking back. Toward lunchtime, her immediate supervisor tried desperately to reach her, but after several unsuccessful attempts, he decided to come in person and inquire about the fate of the stack of papers. As a result, instead of ready audited reports, the manager saw a large inscription on blank paper: "Go to the woods." Kara got into her car and was about to drive out of the parking lot. The car behind her honked continuously. Then Kara stuck her head out of the car window and shouted at the top of her voice, "Go all of you into the woods." The man in the next car clearly heard her slogan. He drove into the roadway right after her, caught up with her on purpose, And when he was on the same level, he twisted his finger at his temple and stepped on the gas. This did not upset Kira in the least. She only shouted once again, "Go to the woods." Kara intended to spend today in bed. Whether she would be able to sleep, she wasn't sure. But the mere fact that she was able, for the first time in her life, to forget about everything seemed like an accomplishment. And at home, she found her husband Max. Apparently, Max hadn't gotten much sleep either. He had just gotten out of the shower and was pouring himself a strong coffee. Seeing his disgruntled wife, he was a little upset with surprise. He would like to be home alone now, not to endure another interrogation of his wife. To avoid her questions, he tried to change the subject. "Do you want coffee? Drink it yourself." Kira mumbled and headed for the living room. Moments later, the husband and wife heard the sound of the door opening. It was John, the eldest son of the family. "Where have you been?" Kira asked angrily. "We were celebrating Anthony's birthday with the guys, and then I decided to stay at their place for the night," John answered. "Why didn't you go to work?" his mother asked. "Why didn't you go to work?" the son countered. But in the next second, John felt awkward. To smooth things over, he picked up the pace again. "I don't want to work for my uncle all my life like you and my father. That's the question of why I'm not at work. You better agree to my favorable offer. We mortgage the apartment in the bank. I take a loan, start my business, and in a year you get a bigger apartment. Bonus, I move out of your place," said John. "What kind of businessman are you? You first at least gain experience, learn to be responsible at least for yourself, and then you can only dream of business," said Max. "Yes, my father is right. It's too early for you to start your own business," said Kara. Then she came close to her husband and whispered in his ear. "You should learn to take your own smart advice," she hissed. "Well, if that's the case, then get off my back with your nagging. I'm going to have to build relationships with the other guys to get them on board. That takes time and energy. So don't ask me where I'm sleeping or who I'm spending time with," John muttered. Not 2 minutes later, the front door of the apartment opened again. This time, none of the family had to guess. It was Sophia, John's sister. "Where have you been all night?" Kira asked her adult daughter. "Mom, I'm old enough to stay with my friends sometimes." "You'll be an adult when you have a family of your own, a husband and kids." "What husband and kids? Who's going to provide for them? If you buy me an apartment, it'll be easier. By the way, I've been looking at a 2-bedroom in a new building for a long time. You and Dad promised me 3 years ago. When will you buy it?" Sophia turned to her parents. "At that time, life was different, and now we don't have such an opportunity. Now you and John should ask your parents if we need any help," the mother added. Further arguments in this family followed the same pattern. Each of them needs something different from the others. At the same time, no one cares whether the family has the ability to fulfill the whims of each family member or not. Kara has been trying to convey this idea to her relatives for several years, but all to no avail. Today, she didn't bother to explain anything. As soon as the argument began to gain momentum, she banged her fist on the table and said, "Go to the forest." The housemates fell silent and looked at each other. They had never seen Mom so bold before. While they were thinking about what to say to Mom, she stated her position. "And in general, even if there is the slightest opportunity, no money for you. Let each of you buy your own apartment. If you continue this conversation, I will sell the apartment today and buy a house in the village. If anyone disagrees, then let him go to the woods," said Kara and went to the bedroom. Tonight in this family was no different from other evenings. Everyone resented the other and was on his own. But suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Kira deliberately did not hurry to open it, in case it was one of her son's or daughter's friends. Or maybe it was one of her husband's friends, who urgently wanted to do some work at night. But none of the family members were in a hurry to open the door. Kira quietly resented the profanity and went to open the door. In front of her stood a woman and a middle-aged man, both dressed expensively and stylishly. "Good evening. Sorry to disturb you," the woman said. Apparently, the unexpected guests also had good manners. Kira stared at them with a questioning look. The unfamiliar woman continued the conversation. "My name is Ariana. This is my husband, Archie. We ended up here by accident. To be honest, we've been looking for an apartment in this building for a long time. Are you selling your apartment by any chance?" the woman asked. Kara was not confused. We have a two-bedroom, 60 square meters. True, the house is more than 40 years old, but that doesn't affect the value of the apartment, she said. Can we take a look at the apartment? Archie asked. Kara silently invited the guests inside the apartment and gave them a little tour. The unexpected guests kept praising the most typical apartment without renovation and with a narrow corridor. According to them, it was as if everything had been thought out for them. Kira thought they were just extremely polite people, but looking closely at their reactions, it seemed to her that her typical old apartment had a very high value indeed. How much do you want for it? Ariana asked. Kira was not confused here either. 10 million, she said calmly. The members of Kira's family looked at each other in silent shock. Of course, before that there was no talk of selling the apartment, especially not for 10 million, while the maximum price of such an apartment is 4 or 5 million, if it is with modern repairs, and the buyers are not confused either. Archie, what do you say? I would have discussed the details of the deal by now, and I wouldn't drag it out, Ariana added. Since you like it, let's just settle on this apartment, Archie replied. At the end of the evening, it was decided to make the deal in 3 days. Unexpected guests did not discuss the unrealistically high price of the apartment. And Kira's housemates were still in shock from the upcoming changes. Her husband resented why she did not consult with him. The children asked a lot of questions about where they would move to now. Kira decided not to bother with the answers. She really wanted to sleep. So to all her family, she gave a short answer. Go to the woods, and went to her bedroom. Over the next week, the deal went through. Kira herself was in charge of the whole process. As soon as she received the requested amount in her hands, went to the real estate company. She was glad that God had heard her prayer for a quiet and spacious house. But she had no idea of the changes that awaited her on the threshold of life. Kira and Max spent weeks looking for a new house. Max liked almost all of the proposed options, and Kira did not approve of any of these houses. Max was getting a little tired of looking for a house and didn't want to go to any more viewings. What's wrong with it? All the amenities are there, not far from the center. The plot is enough. Are you looking for some kind of English castle? How many more do we have to go through? Max is indignant. It's not about houses, they're all nice. But for some reason my soul does not lie on them, said Kira thoughtfully. You women are always inventing a problem where there can't be one. What do you mean your soul does not lie? Are you choosing a friend or a life partner? A house is chosen very simply. Where is it located? Is there enough space? Do you need repairs or not, and so on? The house is chosen with the mind, not the soul, you stupid woman, indignant husband. No, it's not true. Besides all these repairs and distances, there is something else that matters. You just watch in silence, you'll feel it, Kira said. My God, give me patience. Max was indignant again. After long arguments, the couple decided to go to the real estate company once again and familiarize themselves with the new offers. They were met by a realtor named Natalie. She usually works very patiently with clients, but this was the first time she had met someone as meticulous and uncertain as Kira. Natalie had given Kira exactly 12 viewings last week. Kira didn't respond to any of them. Then Natalie got seriously angry and was ready to give up on this client. But Kira had faith in realtor Natalie, so she went back to her again today. If you had said specifically what parameters of the house you were interested in, it would have been much easier. And so if you just want to drive around looking, I can offer one option. If we have a long time hanging. This house is located at a distance of 2 hours from the city. If you are interested, I will give you the address. You can go and see it, said realtor Natalie. Come on, we'll go right away. Kira suddenly perked up. Natalie refused to accompany the client to the viewing because she was not sure that this poor house was unlikely to ever be sold. She wrote the address on a piece of paper, took out the house key, and handed it to Kira. Natasha, why didn't you go with the clients to see the house? The manager asked. Well, no, sorry. This house has been on the market for almost a year. I've been there several times in that time. And you know what? This is not an ordinary house. Something happens to a person in it that takes 3 days to recover, Natalie whispered to her supervisor. Is there some kind of crime story in there? The supervisor asked. No, there's something more interesting. They say that in this house all secrets come to light. Natalie said and rounded her eyes. It's like the plot of a sci-fi movie. How is that possible? Is there a lie detector built into the walls? Laughed the leader. Oh, Harry, you may not believe me. As many times as I've been in this house, every time I've been in it, I've felt the presence of some kind of power. I think it would be a good home for a woman with a difficult personality, Natalie said. And she was right. At this time, seeing the new terrain, Kira was very surprised. The intersection, the solitary tree, the bench under it, the combination of simple and luxurious houses, the whole picture was just like the one she had drawn in her childhood imagination many years ago. And even the colors matched. Kira liked to paint any space in burgundy, and burgundy is the predominant color in this village. Here she and her husband finally reached the right house. The first thing Kira noticed was the obvious signs of life in the house. Even though Natalie's realtor said the house hadn't been lived in for years, but there was no grass on the outside of the gate. The gate itself was shiny, as if someone had cleaned it thoroughly before Kira arrived. They opened the door with the key and went inside. Max was expecting a long tour, so he sat on a bench in the courtyard. Around the house was a large vegetable garden, reminiscent of a real forest. Here, every tree is wider than a man's girth. That's how many hundreds of years old they are. The house was really huge. It had 2 floors, plus a basement and an attic. Kira was glad that the house was exactly what her youngest daughter Lucy had dreamed of. The house wasn't empty. It was unknown who had lived there before, but the family had left some old furniture, pictures on the wall, and some statuettes. Overall, the house looked like an old fairy tale castle from the inside. Kira immediately noticed the silence that dwelled inside the house. Here, away from noisy neighbors and city life, she would definitely sleep well, so the decision was made. She immediately went out into the yard and announced to her husband, "Max, this is our house. That's it, we're buying it." "Are you sure? This house is very expensive for the village. It's a long way from here, and I suppose we'll have to do some renovations inside," Max resented. "You're right. We're giving all the money from the apartment to this old house, but for some reason I want it that way. If someone doesn't like the house, they can go to the woods." "Thankfully, the forest is now under our windows," said Kira and looked at the large vegetable garden with admiration. Kira's family moved into their new home a week ago, but there is no limit to the indignation of the older children. "Mom, I need a car," declared daughter Sophia in the morning. "So you earn your own money, buy one and drive," replied Kira. "With my expenses, it is unrealistic to save money. But Naomi's parents helped. You should also tighten your belts and make me a gift," said Sophia dreamily. "You got a big mouth. Money has to work. If my parents had free money, I would take it to put it to work. And then in a year or 2, I would return it with the income," John added. "Why do you only want money from your parents? I think you should develop and earn your own goals and ambitions," Lucy said. "Lucy, you're too young to teach us. When you grow up, you'll realize how important parental support is," Sophia said. Kara was tired of the children arguing about money, so she silently retired to her room. She occupied a large room on the second floor of the house, with windows to the vegetable garden. Now she could spend days in there and enjoy the silence, but she rarely gets to do that, because she has to drive her youngest daughter Lucy to the sports center every day. She is doing well, and the coaches denigrate her bright future. Against the background of older children, who are not particularly disposed to development, Lucy gives great hope to her parents. As for the lifestyle of the family, nothing has changed with the move. As before, where it is good, he sleeps there. On the contrary, Max began to linger even more often in his strange companies or in the night urgent tasks, which he himself calls so. Tonight was a restless night for Lucy. She usually slept soundly, but tonight she was awakened by a low whispering that came from somewhere not far away. Lucy thought that, as usual, John or Sophia had brought a friend to the house. But when she listened carefully, she noticed that the voices were not her own. She decided to go out of her room and check where the whispers were coming from. Lucy didn't turn on the light so as not to wake her mother. It was a full moon tonight. The soft blue moonlight falls from the window and the outline of the interior of the house can be clearly seen. Lucy walked around all the rooms and made sure no strangers were in the house. She stopped in the living room on the second floor and listened again. There seemed to be whispers coming from the attic. Lucy took a candle from her room, lit it, and slowly climbed up the wooden stairs to the attic. She had already been here during the day and was convinced that there was nothing unusual here. Stacks of old books, an abandoned trunk, old paintings covered with thick cloth. Everything here reminded her of a creative workshop of an enthusiastic person. And now Lucy saw a completely different picture. The room was bright, as if it were not night. As soon as Lucy entered, the whispering disappeared. She scrutinized every corner of the attic and found no one. She decided to go back to her room, but as she reached the attic door, she heard a soft rustling behind her back. Her gaze fell on a thick book with a bright velvet cover that lay on top of a stack of books. Lucy was very surprised because just now that book had not been there. She was curious, so she walked closer. It was not a book at all, but a handwritten diary. Lucy sat down on an old creaky chair and began to leaf through the diary. Judging by the entries, the diary was not written with a ballpoint pen, but with ink that had been used in the last century. Lucy was even more curious. She opened the pages of the diary at random and began to read the entries. The first lines took her breath away, and she couldn't stop. "My name is Amalia. I was born in 1856. I am now 12 years old. My family recently bought this house and we are now actively fixing it up. We were warned that big changes were in store for our family in this house. Indeed, the changes did not take long. I will write about them in detail tomorrow. Today, my mother brought a hereditary sorceress to our house and she performed a ritual. At the end, the sorceress said that now in our house there is no place for lies. Now in this house, everything that is secret is revealed. That's all for today. I need to go to bed early because I have a martial arts class tomorrow." At the end of the entry was another name, Amalia, 1868. Lucy closed the journal and set it aside. Inside her, she felt as if she knew this girl, Amalia. Then she went back to her room and began to compare her life with the life of this heroine. Almost everything matched. Lucy has had a passion for power sports since childhood, and this Amalia had a passion for martial arts. In her diary, she had separate chapters for each of the family members. Lucy decided to read the rest of the entries another day. For now, she needed to find out the secret of the house's witchcraft. If she found any confirmation, it would make sense to read the diary further, or maybe it was just some dreamy girl's fantasy. Lucy spent all night thinking about the diary entries and didn't get much sleep. But her mother was in a good mood. In the morning, she took her daughter to school and went to work. At home, the picture was the same. Her husband did not come home for the night again. Sophia came home drunk at midnight. John didn't show up until the morning. Lucy spent the whole night thinking about her diary entries and didn't get much sleep. But her mother was in a good mood. In the morning, she took her daughter to school and went to work. At home, the picture was the same. Her husband did not come home for the night again. Sophia came home drunk at midnight. John didn't show up until the morning. Lucy spent the whole night thinking about her diary entries and didn't get much sleep. But her mother was in a good mood. In the morning, she took her daughter to school and went to work. At home, the picture was the same. Her husband did not come home for the night again. Sophia came home drunk at midnight. John didn't show up until the morning. The family didn't gather at home until the evening. By then, Max had arrived with a bouquet of flowers for his wife. Kira was already taking it all very calmly. She ignored her husband's outstretched bouquet and asked him to put it in a vase himself. Before the spouse asked, Max himself began to explain his absence strenuously. "Yesterday after work, I rushed home, but right outside the office, I was stopped by Billy. 'Kiara, can you hear me?' So Billy stops me and tells me that his elderly mother is in the hospital. His mom's supposedly in a bad way, but he's a friend, you know. He asked me to be there for him, and I couldn't say no. That's why I couldn't come home. And then my cell phone died, and I couldn't even make a call. Kira, you're not mad at me, are you?" Max was being fawning. "How's Billy's mom doing? Is she going to get back on her feet, or will you have to stay by Billy's side more than once?" My wife asked Riley. "You're quite right. The doctors say her condition is critical. I advised Billy to prepare for the worst. Well, old man, you have to be realistic. So if Grandma's going to be dead in the next few days, I'm gonna have to stick around for a couple more days with my friend. In fact, I think you should take your stuff and move in with Billy until his mom either gets back on her feet or dies. Kara, don't start. Do you have any idea how ridiculous your lies look from the outside? What makes you think I'm lying? You're always getting yourself worked up. If you don't believe me, you can call Billy yourself, Max said. Kara served dinner but didn't eat it herself. She cited her lack of appetite and decided to watch TV in the living room. But there was a surprise waiting for her there. When she turned on the light, she saw on the sofa a very bright girl with long dark hair. One would have thought the girl was Sophia's friend that she had brought with her. But Sophia's friends never sat in Kira's house in a blatantly provocative negligee. As Kara stood at a loss, the girl herself spoke first. So Kira, still believing your husband's fairy tales? Billy's mother died 5 years ago. How could you forget? You were at her funeral, said the girl. I'm sorry, who are you? Kira asked, confused. You're finally starting to ask intelligent questions. Who am I? According to your husband, I'm sometimes Billy, sometimes his boss Jacob, sometimes the evil inspector who keeps him up all night. One time I was even his broken down car he spent all night on the highway. And usually I'm some urgent case that claims Max's attention all night, the girl said. I had a hunch about that, but I couldn't find any evidence before. What do you want from him? He's old enough to be your father, isn't he? Kira asked. I don't really want anything from him. He's the one chasing me. If he doesn't come to me tomorrow, I won't be too upset. I told him that too, but he sat on his knees and begged me not to be so cruel to him. If you don't believe me, ask him yourself, the girl said. Well, if it's so serious, you can take him back to your place. I'll pack his things for him now. Max, come here. Your Shlendra and I have come to a compromise about you, Kira shouted towards the kitchen. Max was surprised at his wife's strange rhetoric and came running into the living room. Kira, you wanted to see me. Did you want to talk about something? Max asked in a kind tone. Yes, I'm talking to your mistress. She says you begged her on your knees. I decided not to torture you anymore and let you go to her forever. Can you pack your stuff yourself or can I help you? Kira asked. Mother, have you lost your mind? What girl? Who were you talking to? Max couldn't understand anything. Then Kira realizes that only she can see the girl in the negligee, but her husband can't. Hey Shlendra, confirm to your elderly admirer our dialogue with you, otherwise he disowns you right in your eyes, said Kira, looking at the empty couch in the corner of the living room. Max looked at all of this in amazement for a while, then took Kira's hand and led her into the bedroom. Kira, dear, you seem really tired. You are dreaming about some leftist woman. You think you are talking to her. You should go to bed now and get some rest. Come on, I'll give you a back massage, said her husband. Kira, meanwhile, was getting quietly angry at her husband's denial of the obvious. There she is, sitting there half naked, she said and pointed to the couch. Kira, either you're joking or you're really tired. There's no one here but you, resented Max. Indeed, this was the first time that anything secret had come to light. Now the family would have to get used to this state of affairs. Lucy had seen what had happened yesterday with her father and mother. She saw this strange woman in the living room. She also saw how her father and other family members were blind to her. Now she has no doubt that what was written in the diary seems to be true. Today she decided to play in the yard. At some point her ball rolled into the street and Lucy ran after it. In the street, she noticed a gray-haired grandmother watching her from the house across the street. Lucy loves grandmothers. She decided to go and say hello to this old woman. It's as if she's been waiting for this curious girl. Hello, do you live here? Lucy asked. I do. Come into the yard, my plum is ripe, I'll treat you, said the grandmother. Lucy went into the yard. In the shade of the trees stood garden furniture, on the table fruit and some books. Apparently, the grandmother is not an ordinary person here either. What's your name? Do you have a granddaughter or a grandson? Because I don't know anyone here. It's time for me to make friends, Lucy said. Grandma Cindy, you can call me that. I have grandchildren in town. I've lived here alone for 30 years. Who are your parents? I think they bought this house in a hurry, said Grandma Cindy. My dad's name is Max. My mom's name is Kyra. You must also have an older sister and an older brother. Yeah, have you seen them yet? Lucy asked. I don't need to see anyone. I just know. This house usually has similar families moving in. I'd assume your older brother and older sister are taking their time living their lives. Is your father likely to have a woman on the side? Grandma Cindy asked. It seems so. Yesterday, this other woman even talked to my mother, but my dad denies it. How do you know all this? Lucy was surprised again. Baby, I'm almost 98 years old. This house was standing when I was still walking. Back then, grown-ups were telling each other the story. Then I witnessed two very similar families living here. It was all the same, Grandma Cindy said. Where did they all go in the end? Lucy asked with terror in her eyes. I don't mean to scare you, but I see you're a smart and strong girl. You'll get over this truth somehow. The thing is, almost a century and a half ago, one of the owners of this house performed a mysterious ritual that took away the ability to lie. And it was necessary because this family had a huge wealth. It was brought as a gift to the youngest daughter of the family. The elders began to claim some of that wealth. A great conflict arose in the family. The mother and father could not resolve it. The conflict intensified. The siblings were on the verge of killing each other. Then the mother of the family went to a magician who came up with a special ritual. If the whole family could be honest with each other, the wealth would not harm them. If they can't, they will kill each other, and the wealth will remain somewhere in the hiding places of the house. It will be found by the most honest member of the new family, said Grandma Cindy. What? There's more treasure buried here. Lucy's eyes widened. Yes, but no one knows about it but me. Everyone who knows is long dead. The previous few families found it, but failed at the task of being honest amongst themselves. In the end, they naturally drove each other out of the house and the wealth went unused, Grandma Cindy said. Lucy said goodbye to Grandma Cindy and returned home. She sat in the living room and pondered what had happened. Everything fit together. The diary didn't seem to be lying, and Grandma Cindy didn't look like a crazy person or a joker. She would hardly make up such a story. Lucy decided to watch further as events would unfold. After yesterday's practice, Lucy's coach called Kira and asked her to meet with him. Lucy was aware of what the conversation would be about, but she didn't want to please her mother before the time. Let the coach tell her it would be twice as pleasant for her. After yesterday's practice, Lucy's coach called Kira and asked her to meet him. Lucy knew what the conversation would be about, but she didn't want to please her mother before the time. Let the coach tell her it would be twice as pleasant for her. Kara, we never cease to admire your daughter's talent and will. That's why we decided to prepare her for the International Junior Championship. We don't have much time, only 3 months. Please encourage her. If she takes one of the prizes, all your efforts will pay off tenfold, the coach said. Lucy heard all that. An international tournament is a good challenge for her, especially if she is confident in her abilities. And if you train hard in 3 months, you can safely claim the main title. After walking outside for a while, Lucy returned home. Surprisingly, by some miracle, the whole family is together today. Her mother and father hadn't spoken since the day a strange woman had shown up in the living room and told Kira all of Max's secrets. Sophia was on fire today. She once again said that she needed either her own apartment in the city or a private car, and by all means, her parents should take care of it. Kira had long ago grown tired of arguing with her daughter. John, on the other hand, was not yet. In the middle of the argument, he said, "And you find a normal man, marry him and ask him for money. That's what everybody does. What's your problem? Look at you. You're beautiful, smart, good at men's issues. Why don't you monetize all that?" John said, "I can't make a meal with these guys hanging around me right now, can I? One seems smart, but he's difficult, likes to teach me. Another seems promising, but not set up for a serious relationship. There's a third one. He has a lot of money, but he's painfully greedy. Try to figure out which of them can make money," Sophia answered her brother. Lucy intervened in the conversation. "And why do you want to give such important issues of life to other people to manage?" John said, "You're smart and know a lot about a lot of things. It seems to me that if you set yourself a specific goal, you can quickly achieve it yourself without any men," said Lucy. "Have you been listening to Greta Thunberg to make such smart speeches? Go on, go and learn your lessons. When you grow up, you'll understand everything. There's only smart people around. They know everything. Who would better transfer money to the card, resented Sophia. Then the mother joined the conversation. Lucy is a child, but she's right. Under the pretext of relationships or financial security, you can discreetly give into the hands of another person some very valuable part of your life. And if you get used to it, it's hard to get in over your head, Kira added. I realize that no one in this family still supports me even in such a goal as a typical purchase of a car or an apartment. It's all like a hygienic procedure for the modern man, right? If you can't support me in that, how can I achieve big goals? Sophia was indignant. She was excellent at twisting the meaning of words and manipulating others. But that doesn't go over well with her mother. Kira spent a long time speaking mentoring words that all as one passed Sophia's ears, and when she was tired, she decided to rest a little in the living room in front of the TV. But no such thing. There were guests in the living room again today. This time she saw a very interesting crowd. In the middle of the sofa sat a man of advanced years with a bald head and a big belly. By all appearances, he was even a little older than Max. Next to him sat a more imposing man, but he was busy with his appearance. He was fixing his hair or looking at his manicure. Away from him sits a typical guy who is no different from millions of others. He looks like the others even with a can of beer in his hands. And at the living room table, several women are seated in chairs. Kira realized she was in for a more interesting session today. This wasn't Max sneaking around with a woman. The skeletons in the closet of the eldest daughter turned out to be much more, and they were much more interesting. Hello, Kira. You said some very valuable words to your daughter just now, but it's a pity she doesn't understand their meaning. I tell her that all the time, but every time she distracts me with her hot dancing or immediately takes me to bed, said an elderly man with a bald head. And who are you to her? Kira asked in complete confusion. Well, why are you so harsh? You better ask Sophia herself who I am to her. I've asked her, but she's waving it off in every possible way. And so in the common people from the outside, such cases as Sophia and I are called relations of a daddy and a kept woman. Are you familiar with that slang? The older man asked. Kira clutched her heart and sat down on the edge of another sofa. My husband Steve is telling the truth. Indeed, he has been trying to devote every free minute to his family for 2 years now. But your daughter Sophia appears here and comes up with an evening entertainment for him, said one of the women. No, darling, it's not like that. I don't really want to go home to your company. I'm the one who'd like to spend time with any of these young and silly girls. Look, Angela, for example, only lives to hunt me and my friends, said the older man and gestured toward the young lady who was fixing her hair in the mirror. Oh, come on, Steve. You say yourself that you've already achieved everything you wanted. You're always bragging that you're loaded and ready to fulfill all the whims of girls like us. And why don't we take advantage of it? Said the young lady and kept fixing her hair. Well, in this matter, even I agree with you girls, said Steve's wife, who had previously looked at these young ladies. I also do not particularly stress him for these adventures. The main thing, he provides us with everything we need. Even if he wants to go to one of you for good, I have lawyers ready to shake him out of his fortune, said Steve's wife. Kira was horrified at what she was seeing and hearing. Sophia, come here immediately, she shouted to her daughter. Sophia, who was at this time applying a face mask in the bathroom in front of the mirror, walked leisurely into the living room. What's wrong, Mom? She asked in an innocent voice. I'm the one who should be asking what happened to you? Is it true what all these people are saying? Kira said and gestured towards the couch. Sophia looked at the couch first, then walked closer, felt its entire surface, walked across the room and turned to her mother. What people to you? What is saying to you? Mom, are you already talking to the TV? Sophia asked, bewildered. Yes, there sits the elderly Steve with his wife and a separate army of young ladies your age, exclaimed Kara. Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. When Daddy talked, we didn't believe what he said. I think you're really overworked. Better go to the bedroom and sleep it off, Sophia said. So you're all trying to make me look crazy. Here you are, sitting there with people telling you everything you know. Now we're gonna see if it's true. Get your phone over here, Kara told Sophia. Sophia had forgotten where her phone was. While she was looking for it, Her mother found it first and started flipping through it vigorously. Here, it says Steve, 4 incoming calls every day, dozens of summons from him. I just saw this Steve. He was sitting in our living room, telling us that you're a kept woman and he's your daddy, Kira said. What are you talking about, Mom? How could you think that? There's no one in our living room. You're hallucinating, Sophia continued to retort. Then Max, who had not spoken to his wife for several days before, intervened in the conversation. Indeed, our mom is overworked and has been walking around hallucinating all the time lately, he added. Lucy had been watching from the beginning and remained silent. When Mother became uncomfortable, she intervened in the conversation. Mom is telling the truth. Every time one of you blatantly lies, some unknown person comes along and tells the truth for you. This all happens because you are all deeply mired in lies and going about your lives in the wrong way. You don't need to make your mom crazy. You need to make sense of what's going on and draw the appropriate conclusions, Lucy said. Oh, they forgot to ask you. You go to your room and do your homework. You're not old enough to tell us how to go about our lives, said Sophia irritably. Lucy walked over to her mother and silently stroked her head. Kira closed her eyes and lay silently on the couch. Lucy thinks about whether to tell her mother about the secrets of this house or leave it as it is. A few days after the family battles happened, Lucy climbed up into the attic again to read the diary further. In the days when my family was learning to tell each other the truth, a new challenge came. Our father made a very lucrative deal and received a sack of gold coins. That day was the beginning of the end. My family could not divide this wealth among themselves. A rift began in my family. In the end, no one got the money. My mother took it to a rich Jew and exchanged it for gold bars. Then she put those bars in a safe chest and hid them in the house. So I want that in the next life my relatives will be born in the same family, that my family will be the same as now, only we don't need extra wealth. Because if people are not ready for it, it brings troubles and problems. That's what was written in the diary. Lucy closed the diary and thought. It all fit together again. Now she ran to Grandma Cindy's house to find out the rest of the story. Yes, I heard. All the trouble in this house starts with a lot of money. But in the end, that money goes to no one, Grandma Cindy said indifferently. Lucy now finally realized that her family is caught up in a serious game with mystical forces. Since she alone knows the course of events, she alone has the power to influence the fate of her family. Early the next day, she and her mother hurried to practice early in the morning. She had an important performance to make. Today, the coach wished to see Kira again, and when we met, he said, Lucy is very good. In a short time, she has greatly honed her skills. If she keeps the same pace until the end of training, she will win. There's no doubt about it. Kira thanked the coach for her efforts, and on the way she praised her daughter for her determination. Mom, you know how much money they give to the winners of such competitions, don't you? Lucy asked. Yes, I know roughly. This money will be enough for your higher education, plus you'll have enough left over for an apartment. Don't worry, I won't let it go to waste, replied Kara. What if the big money brings trouble to our family? Lucy asked. Daughter, what are your thoughts and your attitude? These are all fairy tales of stupid people. In today's world, big money will not prevent anyone. A person decides for himself whether to buy misfortune or good for himself with his money. Where did you get such thoughts? Kira asked. Lucy almost spoke out the secret of the diary from the attic in Baba Nadia's words. She didn't want her mother to suffer even more. Yesterday at work, I had an unexpected workload. Some foreign partners were coming, so they sent me to meet them. So I had to spend the whole night at the airport, then bring the guests to the city, put them in hotels. Only by evening I was free, and I didn't even need to say anything about tiredness. Max justified himself. Kara did not react to her husband's words. In order not to hear more of this nonsense, she decided to close herself in the bathroom and relax with a glass of champagne. But it was not to be. In the bathroom, she saw the same girl in the negligee again. He lied to you again. He spent the night with me. I'm the one who kept him up all night. He's the one who's been walking around with me so tired. You thought that finding out the truth about me would make him feel sorry or ashamed, but it didn't work. Now Max doubts your sanity. He suspects you might be mentally ill. Which means you got almost no trump cards left, the girl in the negligee said, scrutinizing herself in the large bathroom mirror. Hera covered her ears with her hands and sat down on the edge of the tub. Well, the damsel wasn't going anywhere. She continued to recount the details of her relationship with Max. She described in colors what intimate preferences Max had. Kira couldn't take it anymore and ran out of the bathroom. If you don't believe my words, then go look. Right now she is standing in the bathroom in front of the mirror, she said to her husband with indignation. Are you at it again? I thought you said it is and you didn't drink them. Max shook his head. Do you think I'm crazy? Then let's see who's really crazy now. John, Lucy, come here, Kira called out to the children. Lucy came right away. John didn't even seem to hear his mother call him. Lucy, daughter, look in the bathroom. Is there a strange girl in there or not? She said, wrapping her arms around her head. Lucy cautiously went into the bathroom. Hi, your mom's a screamer and she's also mentally ill. She sees everything with her own eyes and asks Max how your father can live with her. The strange girl turned to Lucy. Don't do that to my mother. You better put something on, Lucy said. Then she got out of the bath, went to her father and whispered in his ear. There she really is. Max took a deep breath, put aside his magazine and walked over to the bathroom door. Hello, beautiful stranger. Where are you hiding? Come out, I'm here. Your lover is here. Come out, beautiful. Max started spinning in place with his arms out to the side. Then he came out of the bathroom and walked over to Kira. When you were going crazy on your own, it was still acceptable. But when you dragged our daughter into it, it's too much. What's next? I'm afraid to be around you anymore, Max said. Dad, Mom's not making this up. It's all true. This house is enchanted. The residents of this house begin to see and hear more than others. I've seen it for myself, Lucy said, unable to stand the battle between her parents. Lucy, it's not nice to lie so brazenly. If Mom pressures you, you can always rely on Dad. Daddy will always understand and think of something. Tell me, what did she promise you in return for this game? Max asked his daughter. Lucy realized the pointlessness of further conversation and ran to her room. Next, she heard through the closed door how Kira snapped at her husband and ended up kicking him out the door with his things. Later, Lucy tried to call her father, but his phone was off. Only someone whispered outside her door that there was no point in looking for her father, as he was already in the arms of his mistress and even glad that he managed to get away from the family forever. Several days have passed since the incident. Family members still doubt Kira's adequacy. When Lucy confirms her visions, they believe that the mother and youngest daughter are scheming to influence other family members. But none of them intends to believe in the mystical properties of the new house. Kira brought Lucy home from practice and was about to rest. Lucy went into the kitchen to make dinner from a recipe she had just mastered yesterday. Kira's cell phone rang. She saw a familiar number on the screen. It was her buddy Barbara. Barbara, hi. You've been missing? I thought you and Mickey had gone away or forgotten all about us. Kira greeted her. Yes, we did go on a trip. We got back last week. But I've heard some bad news about you. What's going on with Max? Barbara asked. He's gone off with his mistress. How come? You let him go just like that. You're not going to discuss it? I don't know yet. I don't have the energy to think about the future. We need to deal with the present, said Kara. Oh, I don't recognize my energetic Kira. I think this is a really big deal. Now you just be patient and stay home. Mickey and I are on our way over right now, Barbara said and hung up. Kara didn't mind catching up with old friends she hadn't seen in a while, especially since her family had never had any secrets from these people. They had children who had grown up together. They used to spend vacations and vacations together often. Only lately, they had become a little distant. It didn't take long for the guests to arrive. Barbara gave her gifts to Lucy and hurried to have a heart-to-heart talk with Kira. Mickey followed obediently. It's a nice house, Kara. I can see you chose it yourself. I guess the quality of life has improved here, Mickey asked. I could argue about the quality of life, Kira said, referring to the weirdness of the house. But overall, it's an interesting place. It won my heart right away. I was drawn here, as if I had been longing for some important task, she added. The guests sat down in the living room at a large table. After a while, Lucy served a hot dinner and sat down with the guests. The topic of the evening was the relationship between Kira and Max, who had left the family. Barbara was really worried about her friends. Kara, you should meet with Max and talk about this like adults. How is it that you raised three wonderful children, lived together for so many years, gained assets, and now you're on opposite sides? It shouldn't be like that. You should at least appreciate your common past, Barbara said. I do, no doubt about it, but Max has a lot of questions. For a long time I tried to turn a blind eye to his adventures, but he was in no hurry to come to his senses. Well, that's his choice. If he wants a divorce, he'll get a divorce. If he wants to come back, I'll have to think very seriously about it, Kira said. There's no reason for you to get a divorce. Apart from this misunderstanding in the form of his current affairs, you have no problems in your relationship, Barbara said. Yes, especially this misunderstanding is not worth mentioning either. It's not a big deal for a man to go to the left. Consequently, he will forget the story in a couple of months, Mickey added. Barbara, who had previously been calm and gave wise advice, turned into an angry fury in an instant. Mickey seemed afraid of his own careless phrase, but it was too late. Barbara reacted immediately. Now, what do you mean by that, my dear? Do you mean to say that your story with that dyed store clerk has already been erased from our memory? Are you taking my loyalty personally now? Barbara asked. No, darling, I didn't. That's not what I meant. I meant to say that in such cases, only a woman's wisdom like yours can save a family. I'm telling the truth, pleaded Mickey, who was barely recovering from his row with Barbara. Kara had to make an effort to calm Barbara down and bring the topic of conversation back to a more constructive direction. In a moment, everyone let out their emotions and there was silence. The only thing playing was the TV. It was showing a soap drama where an old man was having an affair with a young girl. Barbara's on again. You give them all your youth, all your energy and strength, and he goes and has fun on the side. That in life and in the movies it seems to be a pattern of life, she said and sighed heavily. Mickey felt uncomfortable. He realized that all this was a stone in his garden. Even if he had nothing with the store clerk, he had recently had to explain himself very stubbornly to his wife. And now Kira's case had triggered a new wave of emotion in Barbara, and Mickey would have to reap the consequences. I'm going out on the balcony for a smoke. You two talk among yourselves, Mickey said and headed for the balcony. At this point, Lucy felt that Aunt Barbara needed to be distracted from the family battles, so she suggested a little tour of the garden. Barbara agreed. Kira decided to tidy up the table and stayed in the house. The most interesting thing was happening at this time with Mickey. He met an unfamiliar handsome man on the balcony. Mickey said hello to him and he introduced himself as if he had been waiting for this. Greetings, brother. My name's Barry. You don't know anything about me, but I was just being remembered and I ended up here, the strange man said. Are you related to Kira or Max? Mickey asked. No, they don't know about me either. I'm an old acquaintance of your Barbara's. She's always giving you jealous fits, isn't she? Well, that's only one side of it. The other side of those attacks contains a huge fear of actually confronting your infidelity. To ease that fantasy blow, your Barbara sometimes likes to go left, said the strange Barry and winked one eye at Mickey. What are you talking about? This can't be happening. Who are you people? Mickey was outraged. I'm her regular lover. Even Kira knows. She just knows how to keep a secret. I've been here a while. I think I'll go home, Barry said, shook Mickey's hand and walked into the living room. Mickey had a strong stamina and character. He never gave in to emotion. That's why he decided to discuss the conversation with the mysterious Misha on the balcony at home, and here, as a guest, he pretended that nothing had happened. The next morning, Kira woke up to an early call on her phone. It was Barbara. Are you out of your mind? You think I can't tell everyone about your affairs with my manager? She shouted into the phone. Barbara, I don't know what you're talking about. What happened? What's wrong is that Mickey found out something about Barry. You're the only one who knows about my relationship with him. Yesterday, when Lucy and I were out in the garden, you stayed at home. He was smoking on the balcony. I take it you told him everything. How could you? You know I was in the heat of the moment, don't you? It's all in the past, but Mickey won't listen to me, she said. Barbara, I've always told you I don't judge your actions. Besides, what's the point of me telling your husband all this? You've seen for yourself the state I'm in right now, So your resentment and doubts are unfounded, Kira answered her. Then how could he know? I didn't dare tell you, but these things can happen in our house. You wouldn't believe it, but I've encountered it myself on more than one occasion. It's probably a mystical thing. I'm powerless here, Kira said. Barbara, of course, didn't believe her words. What kind of nonsense is it that mystical forces reveal all the secrets of the residents and guests of this house? Who would believe such nonsense? If Barbara was angry with her friend from the morning, then after talking to her she seriously thought, maybe Max was right and Kira had really lost her mind. In any case, now it was necessary to close her mouth somehow, so that she would not tell Barbara's piquant secret further. Now Barbara was seriously worried and began to think about how to deal with the crazy Kira Markovna. But all these explanations had no effect on Mickey. That same evening he packed his things in a suitcase and left the house without any explanation. For Barbara, who was already very afraid of losing him, it was a real blow. She blamed her pal Kira all day long. Several months passed, during which many more strange occurrences happened. Each of these cases caused discord and scandals between people. Lucy watched the events with great surprise. People keep talking about the importance of truth. They demand honesty and truthfulness from others. And when they are confronted with it themselves, they don't want to accept the truth, and serious conflicts instantly arise. Her childish mind was constantly preoccupied with these issues. She sees her mother suffering from the amount of truth that has become available to her in this house. It turns out that the only person who doesn't lie to Kira is Lucy. Such truth only brings mother and daughter closer together. Meanwhile, all acquaintances and friends have managed to dub Kira crazy. They now justify Max and his departure from the family. Some even do not hesitate to express themselves and openly say that to live with a crazy woman, adequate man is not obliged. These conversations also reach Kira. The atmosphere in the house is tense to the max. Lucy went up to the attic again today. She leafed through the diary and saw no new entries today. A girl who lived almost 200 years ago describes exactly the same events. Lucy decided to take her mind off all this and started to put the attic in order. Going through old books and paintings, Lucy was convinced that all these things are not randomly collected here. Each of them had a story to tell. In order not to get involved in some mystical adventure, again, Lucy decided not to get carried away with them, so she just went through them quickly to cover them tightly with a dark cloth and never come back here again. When she moved all the books from one corner to another corner, there was only one unassuming wooden chest of irregular size left. The chest was not tall, but it was wide enough. The chest was perfectly smooth on the outside, with no room for a lock on it. As Lucy was groping it on each side, she bumped the corner of the chest hard with one foot. The chest creaked slightly and its lid lifted. Only now did Lucy realize that this was no random object. She carefully lifted the lid of the chest and saw something massive wrapped in a thick cloth. When she carefully opened the edge of the cloth, she couldn't believe her eyes. The edge of shiny yellow metal was revealed. And when Lucy easily removed a piece of dense cloth, then in the wooden chest rows of gold bars were lying in rows. Oh, that's what Grandma Cindy had been talking about, and what the unknown girl had written in her diary. It was gold, the sudden wealth that was killing every family. It was the gold that had caused tragic events in this house, and the gold itself had never done anyone any good. Lucy ran to her mother. "Mother, I should have told you something a long time ago, but I kept it from you," she said. "But don't scare me now. What else do I know?" Kira asked, frightened. "Come on, I'll show you better." Lucy took her mother's hand and dragged her to the attic to show her fine. "What can I say, my daughter? You and I are fabulously rich now. We could even leave this strange house and buy any other house we want. But for some reason, I have a bad feeling about all this," said Kira, and sat down on a stack of books. Lucy and Kira thought for a long time in the attic about the fate of this wealth. By that time, Safia had already arrived home. She had heard a noise upstairs and was already climbing the stairs. When she saw her mother and sister sitting next to a stack of gold bars, she almost shrieked with emotion. "Mom, what is this?" "So you and Daddy didn't spend everything you earned earlier from trading. So we are fabulously rich and can afford anything we want," exclaimed Sophia. "No, you can't use it. This gold has a tragic history. It won't do us any good anyway. Mom, let's wrap it all back up and close it up. We'll assume we haven't seen anything, said Lucy and started to wrap the bars with a thick cloth. Hey, you crazy kid. You don't understand the hard work that goes into every dime. Your parents buy everything for you. You don't have to worry about your expenses. So don't stop others from living like normal people, said Sophia and rushed to the trunk. Stop, Sophia. Lucy is right. We don't need to rush. Things like this don't just go unclaimed. What if someone hid the gold here on purpose and is waiting to take it? And what if the owners come and demand their gold? We have a lot to think about. Lucy is right. Close the chest back up and let's go inside, Kira said. Sophia's indignation was unbounded. She tried to relax in the bathtub, but she couldn't. The shiny bars of gold kept spinning in front of her eyes. She had already looked up on the internet how much each bar was worth. At the most rough estimate, there were about 20 bars in the chest. If they were all converted into money, the family could live comfortably for the rest of their lives. In the evening, John arrived on time, as if he could smell the riches. No sooner had he sat down at the table in the kitchen, Sophia immediately shared the important news. Topic: No way you cannot guess what happened today in our family. Let me guess, Dad came back, or Mom's mood suddenly improved. No, that's not news. Turn on the imagination. Do not limit yourself to any thoughts, flirted Sophia. Maybe you finally dumped your old lover and found a normal guy. Maybe you're finally moving out of your parents' house. Am I guessing now? You're an idiot. What does this have to do with my love life? I told you it's about our family. That I have no imagination. If you don't want to, you don't have to tell me. I'd had enough of this family's problems. So now you can consider this family's problems over. Mom found a chest of gold bars in the attic today. Can you believe it? By my count, there's about 20 bars in there, but Mom's a little cautious about exchanging them for money. I thought you said you wanted to go into business with Sam. Well, go to your mom and talk to her. We need to sell these bars to the bank immediately and buy everything we need for everyone, because the money is flowing away like water, Sophia told her brother. Is this for real? Is it really gold or is it a fake? John said incredulously. If you don't believe me, we can go and see it, but we better make sure the little one doesn't disturb us. She's got some cockroaches in her head too. She says this gold brings bad luck, Sophia said. John didn't believe it at first, but Sophia convinced him. True, they didn't manage to get to the attic. Lucy noticed everything and stopped them. Sophia was really angry now. You little one, you've had enough of being underfoot. Do your homework and go to bed, Sophia hissed. You mustn't touch that gold. You're already in bad enough shape. And with this gold, it could get even worse. There's a record. I read it all, Lucy said and stood in front of the attic door. Sophia realized that persuasion did not work on her stubborn sister. She walked over to her and tried to pull her away by the arm. At that moment, Lucy shifted her foot unsuccessfully and rolled down the stairs. Hearing the crashing sound, Kira ran out of the room. Seeing Lucy lying at the bottom of the stairs, Kira ran to her. Lucy seemed to have fainted. When she fell, the impact was on her head. That's evidenced by the broken nose and the blood dripping from it. Call an ambulance, the mother shouted to her older children. Sophia nudged John in the side and nodded her head, signaling him to call an ambulance. John took his time heading into the kitchen but didn't find his phone there. At that time, Kira had her hand on Lucy's pulse and sensed something wrong. The girl was barely showing signs of life. But older kids don't really care about that. There's no time to wait. The ambulance will take a long time to get here. Let's get her to the hospital. John, take her to the car, Kira said and ran to her room to get her bag. Kira managed to get Lucy to the hospital in time. The doctor later reported that the girl had suffered a serious head injury and would have to stay in the hospital for a couple weeks. John left his mother by his sister's side at the hospital, himself rushing back home. Sophia's words about the bars of gold in the attic kept him on his toes. When he returned, Sophia was calmly moving the bars from a wooden chest into a gym bag. When she saw her brother, she was a little startled. John couldn't believe his eyes. Wait, is this really gold? Are all these bars gold? Or maybe it's just metal? John picked up one bar and started to check it out. No, they're real. Here, Each one has a code on it. Wait, where are you going to take them? John asked Sophia. It doesn't matter where, the main thing is to bring them to the nearest bank tomorrow and get the money, Sophia puffed. While John came to his senses, Sophia managed to put all the ingots in her bag. So what are you waiting for? Are you with me or not? Sophia said and tried to lift the bag, but she couldn't. It's about 20 kilos, no less. Don't you dare go outside with that, said John. So you help me, or we'll just keep waiting for who knows what, said Sophia. Are you out of your mind? With a load like that, you'll be robbed at the first corner. That's not how you do things. First, you have to find buyers, make sure they are reliable, and then do something. And anyway, we should at least talk to Mom first, John said. Tired of arguing with her brother, Sophia was finally angry. She kicked the bag with her foot, then took out 2 bars and hurried to her room. After that, no one close to Sophia saw Sophia in the house. Lucy was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later. On the day of discharge, her mother and brother came to pick her up from the hospital. After they got in the car, Lucy said, "Mom, don't be mad, but there's a surprise waiting for us at home." Kara flinched slightly and asked, "Lucy, daughter, don't scare me like that again. What kind of surprise?" "My heart can't take any more surprises," she said jokingly. "When we arrive, you'll see for yourself." When they arrived home, Kira saw the table set in the living room. She thought Sophia had returned, but she was met on the doorstep by Max with a bouquet of flowers for her daughter. "Mom, I didn't mean to upset you. In fact, Daddy's been coming to see me at the hospital since the first day. And today I wanted to see him at home. Let him stay with us today," Lucy said. Kara didn't object. Knowing the oddities of their home, the family sat at the table in silence. Each of them tried not to say a word, lest it turn into a mystical seance. "Mom, Dad, we recently discovered something in the attic. Now it's time to decide the fate of this fortune. You know, I have big plans. I'm gonna start my own business, and the money from the sale of a bar of gold would be very useful," John said suddenly. "What bars?" Max asked in surprise. "Gold bars, Dad, real gold bars. The former owners of the house must have forgotten them. Lucy found them in the attic. But foolishly, she thinks we shouldn't touch them," said John. "Come on, let's go and see what's in there," said Max and headed for the attic. "Wait, you can't touch that gold until you learn to tell each other the truth. Otherwise, they will bring great and misfortune," said Lucy. "Daughter, what nonsense is this? We'll just look and come back. Before we do anything with them, we'll think about it," said Max and left the living room. At that moment, a crowd of young men appeared from nowhere in the living room. Apparently, each of them was having a lot of fun. Some of them were dancing with champagne in their hands. Some of them were holding the white powder in a clear bag and treating the others. A close friend of John's, named Sam, turned to Kira. "Mom, your son's life is actually running on drugs. He needs the money for business, and he needs the business to continually generate income. By his logic, this constant income will help him buy high in any amount and at any time. And now he is limited by his salary, but his soul demands new and new portions of entertainment. Look at us, we're all young, beautiful, promising. But we didn't choose the path of career and labor, but the path of enjoying life. John joined us a year ago. He tries to break out of our circle sometimes, but we won't let him. And he is very well with us," said the young man and inhaled the white powder. Lucy also witnessed this picture. She and her mother realized without further ado that John had long ago fallen into bad company. Kira had guessed it before, but John had never admitted it. This time the secret was revealed in time. Father and son saw the gold bars with their own eyes, sat near the pile for a while, then returned to the living room. "Indeed, this is a decent fortune. We should gradually exchange everything for money and invest it somewhere profitable. Thanks to this find, each of us can finally quit our hated jobs and just enjoy life. There's enough money for everyone," Max said. Lucy was looking forward to finishing dinner. A plan spontaneously matured in her head about how to keep her family safe from tragedy. Today was exactly 6 months since Lucy and Kara had been left alone together. A month ago, Kara felt sick. When she went to the hospital, they could not diagnose her correctly for a long time. Only after a while the doctor told me the disappointing news. She had a serious illness. The same day, the same minute, she decided that she would do everything possible to get out of the clutches of the insidious disease. She also decided not to tell Lucy about her illness. A few days had passed since Kira had already laid down completely. Now she needs constant care, but still reassures Lucy that she will soon be back on her feet. Lucy believes her mother's words and waits for that day. In recent days, they have developed a joint evening ritual to dream about the future before going to bed. "Mommy, I think John, Papa, and Sophia will come back to us soon," Lucy says. "They will definitely come back. We are a family. Just a big favor to you when they come. Try not to remember anything about the past. They will come back to us different, having realized their mistakes," says Kara. "Mom, when I grow up, I will never disappoint you. You will only be proud of me. And then you and I will go somewhere together to the sea. You'll nurse my children. You'll dream of peace from them. But my children will be hanging around your neck all the time," says Lucy. Of course, we should dream of good things. But then there's reality, and it can put a person in front of a fact at any minute. If a person knows this, it will be easier for him to accept these facts. If a person thinks that the future should be only what one wants it to be, then it can be very painful when it comes. Therefore, one has to live with the idea that the moment in love will have to be let go, Kira tells her daughter. Lucy nods and agrees with everything she says. Kira agonizes over the fact that she can't tell her daughter the bitter truth about the immediate future. But it doesn't seem fair of her to keep silent either. If she remains silent, her natural outcome will be seen by Lucy as an unexpected tragedy. So she tries to convey the truth to her daughter in various roundabout ways. Lucy has noticed it. As soon as they begin to talk about their dreams together, her mother immediately begins to tell the philosophy that dreams may not come true. Today they had a visitor, Aunt Barbara, who hadn't been over for a long time. "Kara, why are you making a mess and huddled in a corner?" Barbara asked from the doorstep. "I'm a little sick, but it will pass soon," said Kira in a quiet voice. "But what porridge are you talking about?" No one knew Kira's diagnosis and illness but her. Of course, Barbara didn't take her current condition seriously. She came to talk about something else. "I've waited so long for you to invite me to a frank conversation after that misunderstanding between us. And you're walking around like it never happened." That's how she started her conversation. "Barbara, what misunderstanding are you talking about? And why should I apologize to you?" Kira asked. "Oh, so you've forgotten all about it. You're the one who told my Mickey about my buddy Barry, that I've been having an affair with him for years. Mickey actually believed it. He left home 6 months ago and never came back. So, my dear, you're the one who ruined my family." Barbara was indignant. "I'll tell you once, but you'll have to decide whether you believe it or not. So, in this house, in some strange way, everything secret is revealed. I've thought a lot. I've talked to a lot of knowledgeable people, and I've realized you come to this house to face the truth and to grow above your weaknesses. If you and your husband have not been able to overcome this crisis, then you need to delve even deeper into this issue and still find common ground in your relationship. As for me, I didn't tell your Mickey anything, so your claims are unfounded." Kira said these words slowly, emphasizing each word. But Barbara was used to answering at once, rather than thinking about the meaning of what she said. They did not understand each other. Barbara said many hurtful words to Kira and went home. Kira was very sorry that the conflict could not be resolved. She lamented that with her last breath, this unresolved conflict might be troubling her soul. After Barbara left, Kira felt much worse. If she used to go for a walk in the garden at least once a day, now this joy is no longer available to her. Lucy tries her best to cheer up her mother, but her efforts have no effect. Today, she decided to have a serious talk with her daughter. "Lucy, if our loved ones ever come back to us, try not to judge them for their life choices anymore. And also try not to stop them from using those gold bars," she said. "Why is that? Aren't we in enough trouble from them?" Lucy asked. "I think the trouble is not the gold, but the fact that there have been so many lies in our family. But it's not about you and me, it's about them. The fact that they are all gone from this house now shows that they are working hard to learn their lessons. They will surely come to realize their mistakes. And then no wealth will be dangerous to them," Kira said. "If they can get those ingots from the well, let them use them," Lucy replied briefly. Indeed, a few years ago, when Lucy had just gotten out of the hospital, John and Max had disagreed on how to rationalize the gold. Eventually, their conflict escalated to a family fight. Kara took it the hardest. To save the situation, Lucy again came up with an unconventional way out. At night, she discreetly dragged all the ingots from the attic to the vegetable garden and then dumped them all in an old abandoned well. She told only her mother about it. And she told Max and John that the former owners of the house had come and taken the gold. They refused to believe it, but there was nothing they could do. Thus, mother and daughter hoped to establish peace in the family, but Max and John were even more upset now. Both of them left home in those days and still haven't returned. Kara deliberately does not inform them about her health condition. She has little desire to talk to anyone from the outside world since she was dubbed crazy. She only feels sorry for her daughter. But deep down, she's sure that Lucy will make it through and make her way into the big time. Lucy, stop sitting by my bed. You got school and you haven't even had a good night's sleep. Go to your room and sleep properly, Kira said, and barely persuaded her daughter to go to her room. In the morning, Kira asked Lucy to get some of her neighbors to sit with her until lunch. Lucy left the house and went straight to Grandma Cindy's house. But at that moment, Grandma Cindy was on her way to the house. I know, baby. I know I'm needed in this house today. I'm on my way, Grandma Cindy said and quickened her steps. Lucy didn't pay much attention to her words, but just hurried to school. When she came back from school, the gate of the house was open wide. There were many people around the house and inside. All the relatives and acquaintances seemed to have gathered. Lucy was met by Max himself and said, "Mommy has left us, my daughter. I can't believe it. She is no longer with us," sobbed Max. Her mother's death came as a complete surprise to Lucy. It was only now that Lucy realized that her mother was not really on the mend, as she had convinced herself. Only after a while she realized that her mother tried to make her understand the inevitable outcome, but did not dare to tell her directly. It is a great happiness to see your parents off on their last journey. My mother told me that she buried her 3 children with her own hands. That's a real grief. And my 3 children are alive, healthy, and full of strength. Thank you, God, for this happiness, said Kira before her death several times. Only now Lucy realized that these words were said so that she did not grieve much after her departure to the next world. Only a strong-spirited person could do such a thing. The funeral was over, the guests left, and Lucy was left home alone. Max offered her his company, but she declined. One of those days she went up to the attic and pulled out the diary again. She shuddered, but why be afraid now when so much had already happened? This time Lucy came to the attic with her inkpot and pen, which she had bought at the stationery store. This time she did not read the lines from the diary. Today she came to rewrite it. My name is Lucy. I was born in 2006 to a family of an accountant and an engineer. Our family settled in this house to learn honesty and truthfulness. But here was a lesson that proved too hard for my family. My father was the first to fail this lesson. He just turned his back on us. My sister learned the truth about her life, but couldn't grasp the meaning. My brother tried the hardest to grasp the true meaning of what was happening, but he was powerless before his own greed. All this was happening in front of my mother's eyes. She couldn't handle so much truth and passed away prematurely. I realized that I was the same Amalia who had lived almost 200 years ago with her family in this house. Judging from this diary, no family has ever been able to pass this lesson with dignity. Therefore, I ask God to consider this lesson closed and to release the sorceress powers in this house in all directions. From now on, whoever lives in this house, nothing unusual will happen to him. One should forget about unexpected riches, because the old well is already filled with sand and garbage. The gold will be found by our descendants after hundreds of years. And in this house, let there be peace and quiet now, even if it costs deceit and lies between family members. Lucy, 2021. There was a new entry in the diary. 4 years had passed unnoticed. During this time, Lucy met the international students who were interning in the settlement. They gladly agreed to occupy the second floor and attic of the house for a commensurate payment. In addition to a steady income, Lucy received decent company where she could develop her language skills and discuss education and development issues. Her new friends were so united in spirit that they became like new siblings for Lucy. They were the ones who helped Lucy choose the right university abroad. It was they who spent long evenings helping her to prepare for her enrollment. As a result, Lucy was able to enter one of the best universities in Europe remotely and was already preparing to leave. On one of those days, there was a sudden knock on the door. Lucy went to open it. She was extremely surprised to see a gray-haired man of advanced age at the gate. "Lucy, my daughter, how do you have grown? How beautiful you've become. I've missed you so much." Max was fawning over his daughter. "Really, I doubt you miss me, but you're just in time. Come inside," Lucy said and invited her father inside. "How things have changed around here. Did your grandmother move in with you?" Max asked with surprise, looking at the fresh renovation and perfect order in the house. "No, my friends lived here. They wanted to clean it up, and I just helped them. Now they only come back in the fall," Lucy said. "Friends, you say? They live here? How many are there?" Max asked cautiously. 8 people, and they are all from different countries. They live here for a small fee. There is enough room for everyone. Why do you ask?" Lucy posed a counter question. Max was not immediately able to answer. However, Lucy guessed what had happened. "Let me guess, the realization came to you that you left your family for nothing. I take it your young friend is finished and you've come to this house for good?" Lucy asked her father. Max nodded his head silently. Lucy didn't comment on the situation, remembering her mother's words not to condemn her loved ones for their mistakes. Max deep down felt grateful to his daughter for showing sensitivity and wisdom. True, he felt guilty that he hadn't even participated in this girl's upbringing. On a hot summer afternoon, Max was tidying up the vegetable garden. Lucy was doing some rearranging inside the house, mentally planning her imminent departure. At that moment, the doorbell rang again. Lucy was surprised, as she was not expecting anyone today. Opening the door, she froze in surprise. "John, are you brother? What are you doing here?" Lucy asked in surprise. "If you let me in, we'll have time to talk about everything," John said. Then John opened the trunk of his luxury car and began to drag his hotels into the house. There were quite a few of them. Then they sat down at the table and a heart-to-heart talk took place. John was very sorry that he could not see his mother off on her last journey. It was understandable, because in those days he was in prison. The bad company he'd gotten involved with had put him behind bars. But he was lucky enough to get out of jail a lot sooner than he did. "If I'd had a lot of money at the time, that company would have sucked me in. I wouldn't have been able to get out of jail so easily. It was only after that lesson that I realized how right our mother was," John said. Lucy listened silently and made no comment on her brother's story. Apparently, he hadn't been here long. From what he told her, he'd been working on his career since he'd been in prison, and now he was doing just fine. The house was a little warmer and more cheerful now, but it lasted exactly 1 week. A week later, the doorbell rang again. This time, Lucy was not surprised by the new guest. It was her sister, Sophia. "What, Lucy? Didn't recognize her? You didn't even invite her in?" Sophia stood at the gate. Of course, Lucy invited her in. But in general, Lucy remained cold towards her sister. Sophia was trying to get her younger sister's attention. "I'd like to take you shopping, and then we'll sit somewhere in a cafe and talk," Sophia insisted. "I don't really like such places, so you can go yourself," Lucy resisted. "You seem to have grown up, but you are still such a fool. Don't you realize that what I really want to talk to you about is sister to sister? I have so much news I want to tell you. You have no idea how my life has changed over the years." "Who would I tell all this to if not my own sister?" Sophia insisted. Lucy had to force herself to spend one day with her sister. It wasn't out of love or affection for her, but out of curiosity. Lucy wanted to know what had happened to make Sophia change so much. "Actually, Mom was right. I wish I had realized what she was saying in time. Indeed, that old Steve had taken advantage of me and my youth. Not even 6 months later, his attitude went beyond all limits. I was enslaved to him because I worked for his friend's company. He and I had a big quarrel, and one day I lost everything. My job, money, rented apartment, and even the documents he took away from me. That's when my eyes were opened. From that moment on, I decided never to give anyone else the right to control my life, especially not a man. I understood why Mom was so brokenhearted about it. Safia continued her confession, but Lucy listened to her sister with the edge of her ear and decided to keep her answers to herself, because that's what Mom asked. Lucy, John, I have a brilliant idea. Why don't we go to our mother's grave tomorrow morning? I don't even know where she is, Safia said a couple of days later. I was there last week. If you want, you can go with your father. I'll drive you the way to find her grave. I'll stay home, Lucy said. She had no particular desire to talk to her sister, but Safia wasn't leaving her any chance to turn her back on her. Apparently, Sophia had also successfully come out of the big shock, and she was doing just fine now. And the apartment is bought, and someone gave her a car. She managed to show a picture of her baby, who was now left with a nanny, and her husband was indeed a very noble and good-natured man. Here was the whole family assembled, but Lucy had no joy in her soul from this company. When the next morning they went to visit her mother's grave, Lucy sat at the window with a cup of tea, and a wave of a dream came over her that she would sell this house now, take all the money and buy somewhere modern apartment on the top floor where peace would only dream. It was her heart's desire. Lucy immediately forgot about it. Once again remembering her mother's admonition not to judge her brother, sister, and father, Lucy decided to cook her specialty tonight and have a family dinner. Of course, the elders were very excited about it, but just as the family sat down at the table, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Max himself who went to open the gate. An unfamiliar woman and a man said that they had already come to the house and talked to the owner. Max invited them into the house, since that was the case. Lucy, hello dear. My name is Ariana and this is my husband Archie. We've been looking for a house in this neighborhood for a while, and we thought we'd stop by. You're selling this house, aren't you? The mysterious woman asked. Lucy had never had such thoughts before, but now she was not confused and said, Yes, I am. Further events were already developing on a separate mystical scenario. Dad, we're gonna be late. Anthony knew it himself, but what could he do about the zipper on his superhero costume being stuck shut? His son sniffed his nose dangerously hard and he was about to cry. Now baby, it's almost done. Anthony pulled the zipper tongue with determination and the suit zipped up, but the zipper tongue remained in his fingers. Oh, it was awkward. Now how do we get Nikita out of there? Probably we'll have to cut the suit open with scissors. He shook his head, whether his hands were crooked or just a poor quality product. However, now it was important another thing, they were really late. Come on, let's go, Anthony said. Take my hand and let's go. The elevator in the house was broken again, so they took the stairs, and when they reached the 5th floor from the 8th floor, they were out of breath. Are we taking the car? No, why? There's a daycare center 2 houses down, we'll run. Anthony smiled at his son. I'd like to fly. Dad, do you think you can become a real superhero to fly and save everyone? The man sighed. In general, Harvey in his 6 years was a terribly serious kid, did not believe in Santa Claus, was not afraid of the dark, and even fearlessly visited the dentist, and also knew how to be strong and not cranky in the store at the counter with sweets. But in superheroes believed desperately, fervently, and Anthony, of course, played along. Anything is possible, son, he said, and then stopped, picked up his son in his arms, because ahead the yard was filled with deep puddles, to bypass which, without dirtying the masquerade costume, it would be difficult. With what Harvey became awkward if he was in a hurry. Now you're going to fly, exclaimed Anthony, and he hummed, speeding up, and his son laughed happily. Harvey's mom died right after giving birth, and Anthony couldn't accept it and move on with his life for a long time. It had happened so ridiculously, stupidly, and he also blamed himself. The fact was that he and Natalia had been married for 3 years and then decided to divorce. She cheated on him. And not in a passionate affair, not because he was, for example, cold or offended, but just like that. Natalie said it was an impulse, an outburst of passion. Anthony refused to forgive her. He even filed for divorce, but then he withdrew it because Natalie admitted she was pregnant, and she swore it was Anthony's baby, and he did not know what to think, and he said that the family, in principle, can be saved, but only It will be necessary to do a paternity test. Natalie said that such distrust offends her and said that the test will be done, but only when she gives birth. But for now, she does not want to participate in this circus and will live separately. Anthony's parents and his relatives, by the way, were on his side and exhorted Natalia in every possible way. But she showed the worst traits of her character and demanded to be left alone, otherwise she would leave. Anthony rented an apartment for Natalie and sometimes they met. She talked sparingly about her pregnancy. "May I?" He asked her once and reached out to touch the belly, where he knew for sure now, and he did not allow himself to doubt it anymore. "No way," Natalie gritted her teeth and slapped him on the arm, which, by the way, was unexpectedly offensive. "You're not sure it's yours, are you? Did you forget?" And then, in her 8th month, Natalie announced that she was going on vacation to India. Anthony, of course, was totally against it. But then Natalie was terribly offended by him, shouting that he was overprotecting her during the whole marriage and she wanted to see the world before settling down in maternity leave, maybe for years. "It's like Paris," she said, "and I want to see India and die." If he only knew that these words turned out to be a terrible prophecy that came true. Later, the doctors of the Indian clinic told Anthony how everything happened. According to their version, the body simply could not withstand all these loads, and even in the maternity hospital pathology was revealed, which earlier, when observing the pregnancy, simply did not notice. Anthony flew to India to pick up the cold body of his wife and a warm, squeaking bundle with his son. It seemed to him then that his heart would just take and stop or burst into atoms from the pain of loss. But it kept on beating, held on for the sake of his baby, the long-awaited firstborn. Anthony held on and tried not to think that if fate had been more favorable to him then, now they would be back together, a happy family, who overcame everything. When he returned, the relatives insisted on a paternity test, and Anthony insisted that he would betray Natalie's memory. But then the test was done, and yes, it turned out that the son was his own blood. "You should get married," the mother said. In fact, she had this kind of talk with frightening regularity. But there was no way to avoid them, because Anthony left the baby on her. He could have hired a nanny, but he did not trust strangers. "You can't do that. The baby needs a mom, and you need a wife. How are you going to manage on your own? What kind of example of a single-parent family are you going to set for him?" "Everything will be fine." Such an answer, as Anthony realized, on the one hand did not lead to the development of conflict, and at the same time allowed to keep in these educational conversations at least some sense of dignity. In fact, apart from these conversations, Lucy had nothing else to reproach him for. She lived across the house from her son. He purposely lived closer to his parents as a good, caring son, chose the apartment when he selected options on the mortgage market. Lucy was a good grandmother and never reproached her son that he laid on her such a burden. Anthony eventually got used to being a single father, and now, when his son grew up, he already remembered with a smile sleepless nights, delight when Harvey took his first steps, excitement that his son was found to be allergic to nuts. Now Anthony realized that time flies fast. He will not have time to look back, as Harvey will grow up, become an adult, and then, in general, will leave him, go to his adult life. So now Anthony intended to enjoy every moment of parenthood. And as for his personal life then, well, it's not worth it at all. He tried to have a couple of novels, but everything was not the same. And to have a mistress, as his mother said again, because it was right, because for health, he was not going to. "Sorry we're late," Anthony said, as he and his son crossed the threshold of the kindergarten. Harvey's grandmother, by the way, did not approve of this kindergarten, saying that you could easily go to an ordinary kindergarten, and even the same one that once attended Anthony himself. But he was adamant and still gave Nikita in a private and very prestigious elite kindergarten. Here you could study foreign languages, dance, there was a huge playground and garden where the kids at will could grow flowers, and of course, there were regularly held all sorts of matinees. On this one, he and his son learned a poem. "Good afternoon, hello," Anthony said when he found himself in a group of other parents. The teachers had gathered the kids together to have another talk with them about the upcoming performance. Anthony was distracted by the phone texting from work, even though, by the way, he had the day off today. But he had already gotten used to such inconsiderate bosses. But they paid twice as much as similar positions in other places, and he needed the money so badly. In general, the money had been flying away at a fantastic rate lately because his parents had taken out a loan for the construction of a summer house, but did not calculate the payments a little, and then his father went on a long sick leave. He worked at a construction site and fell off a stepladder. In general, it was necessary to help. I had to pay my rent. I had to save for my son's future education. In general, Anthony even regretted that he could not clone himself. As in science fiction movies, then his copy would be able to work too. Ouch, squeaked the little kid who crashed into Anthony's legs. Hey, aren't you hurt? He asked with a smile, and then as he glanced at the kid's face, he froze. It was like that moment in a nightmare dream when you suddenly feel the unknown creeping up from behind, or suddenly lose your balance and start falling. A kind of dizzying moment when the surrounding reality is ready to burst, crack at the seams, scatter into shards, revealing something else. Nope, everything's fine, the boy replied and galloped away. Anthony couldn't understand, and it didn't seem to him, that this boy was an exact copy of his son, only he was wearing a different Harlequin costume. Dad, I gotta go. Harvey brought him out of his weird reverie. Come on, Dad. All the moms, dads, grandmas, and others are already sitting down, and I have to go on stage now. And you're not? What? Oh yeah, sure. Let's go, Anthony replied absent-mindedly. This matinee they decided to make large-scale and unusual on the stage was to be a performance in which the most different characters united in order to save the beautiful princess who ruled the kingdom of dreams and candy. The script was confusing, like an Indian movie, and whether because of this, or maybe because of the strangest meeting, but Anthony could not understand what was happening there on the stage, only filmed everything carefully on the video camera. And then Harlequin appeared on the stage. Anthony held his breath. His son froze in amazement and even opened his mouth. But then small and responsible Harvey said nothing. That is, he said exactly what he was supposed to say on the roll. When the show was over, Harvey, flushed and excited, ran up to his father. Well, Dad, I'm a real artist, aren't I? Dad, did you see the boy who was the jester? He looked just like me. It was like looking in a mirror. Yes, there are coincidences in the world. Really? Well, scientists say that in the world, every person has a double and even more than one. Muttered a fact remembered from some program. Anthony, listen, there you have a tea party at the children's table now will beat, right? Aha, let's go then. Anthony didn't want to spoil the child's holiday with his oddities. Therefore, he honestly sat at the table set for adults and then decided to look for the parents of the boy. Stop, he warned himself, and why do it? Why do you care so much? There aren't many people who look alike. Stop your hysterics. We said we'd see the doctor today. A gentle, beautiful, but right now steely, stern female voice caught Anthony's attention. He turned around. A girl in a scarlet-colored slip dress and shoes on an abnormally high stiletto was pulling the very boy in a Harlequin costume. Mom, I don't want to. Mom, it's a holiday. Who are you so abnormal, huh? Flash blonde, so I'm sick of it. Well, do you want me to buy you a cake if you now agree to kindly? No, I don't want cake. I don't want to go to the doctor. He's got to give me a shot. One little prick, like a mosquito. The girl crouched down in front of Harlequin and stroked his wiggly red head. And then we'll fly. I don't want to fly. I'm fed up. You're always busy. You leave me. The boy's lips trembled. You don't love me at all, Ma. Until now, on this morning of the matinee in the kindergarten, there was a positive, light atmosphere. But now it changed. Parents looked at the child with sympathy, some with condemnation at his mother. Selena, is this really a bad idea? It's the kid's holiday. One woman decided to intervene. Anthony knew her a little. Her name was Maddie, and she was always driving and taking back 2 kids, a grandson and a granddaughter. I recommend you to take care of your own and not to interfere in the parenting of others. The blonde replied coldly and dragged Harlequin after her. He no longer kicked and resigned himself to his fate. Excuse me, intercepted her already at the exit from the garden. Anthony, I'm sorry, please. Why? The blonde asked. Are you going to teach me how to be a mother too? No, not at all, swallowed nervously Anthony. Just, your son is very similar to my son, just the same face. I don't understand. The girl squinted, and Anthony was amazed at the amazing color of her eyes. green with amber yellow speckles, and she looked so like a wild cat, ready to leap, claws open, and then just try, daredevil, to reach out a hand to stroke the silky fur. Anthony tried to explain his impressions, then pointed his hand at Nikita and said, "Look for yourself." Curious," said the blonde, and then tightly grasping his son's hand, headed away, and a minute later got into a car, obviously expensive SUV, and drove away. Anthony sighed, "What a morning." Then he went back to the kindergarten. Today, after the matinee, they planned a small meeting for those parents who could, to talk about how this place would be developed. They wanted to add a chess club to the kindergarten, as well as to organize a fountain in the yard and to collect the opinions of native children. The conversation took place the next day when they were picking up the kids from the kindergarten together. The boy Harlequin, who, as it turned out, was called Alex, did not come today. His mother called and said that he was unwell after vaccination. Oh, she's had it in her life. Maddie shook her head and looked interestedly at the interlocutor, whether he wanted to listen further. Anthony could not understand himself why, but he wanted to. And Maddie was a great hunter of all kinds of gossip, so she spoke up. It turned out that Selena was only 30 years old, and she was already a successful businesswoman. Well, she was a while ago. Selena was born in the same city, grew up here, and inherited several car repair shops from her father. Selena received a red diploma in a prestigious university and even then was on some courses abroad, like in management in England. Her return home coincided with the death of her father. The girl had no mother, but there was a stepmother, with whom they were in mildly tense relations. Selena sold a network of workshops, and with this money went abroad. It was said that she invested there in the construction of real estate somewhere in India. It was reported that there Selena met a man to match, a businessman and almost the son of a Raja. They also said that they had a wedding where the newlyweds were ridden by a white elephant. True, even Maddie doubted it. But what was known for sure was that she broke up with this man and came back here with her son. She came back for the reason, by the way, that they're in India, with the business that did not work out. So she took the last money, and now she is trying to settle down here, especially since she still owned the apartment given by her father. Also Maddie, although she did not know Selena personally and closely, but as a distant relative of her acquaintances, knew such details. For example, that Selena was accustomed to a beautiful, luxurious life, that she is fastidious in the choice of cavaliers planaka high, just like a queen, and also knew Maddie, of course, that Selena is very strict with her son. The garden is changed again and the old one did not like, you see, the level of teaching Italian language. She is raising a polyglot, sighed Maddie, and when will a person have a childhood? Don't think that she takes him to and from the garden by herself. No way. She's a businesswoman, so she hires babysitters, but apparently she fired another one in a scandal, so she had to do it herself. Anthony just listened. He did not want to express his opinion, although he certainly had it. And it was simple. If you have a child, then there are all sorts of nannies. It should be less, because nothing can replace the baby's own people. And in general, this Selena seemed to him some kind of ice queen, as if she was beautiful, just like from the cover of a magazine, but it felt in her. Coldness, arrogance, cruelty even. Anthony chuckled to himself. Maybe she forced her husband to divorce her. And how, I wonder, she arranged everything allows him to see his son or not? Poor man. The next day from work managed to be released early, finally handed over a large advertising project. Chief even announced a corporate party on such an occasion, but Anthony refused, for which, by the way, he was once again jokingly called the dumb sorpus. In the free time he decided, first of all, to make his son homemade pancakes with jam, and it was already done. And secondly, he wanted to clean up the closet. The mess there was such that it was scary to open the doors. And suddenly from the far corner of the top shelf Anthony took out a box. He frowned. What was there? And then having opened it, he sighed convulsively. His wife's things that he had taken from India. Nothing special like that. Personal things that could not be thrown away, because they once belonged to the person he loved. His hands reached for them as if by themselves. Here was a funny figure of a plastic toy giraffe, which his wife considered her mascot. Here was her book, some kind of a puffy love novel. Anthony was about to put everything back, closed the box with the lid and put it away upstairs again, and then not to touch these things for a long time, maybe forever. But then a notebook fell out of the book, a thin one. He frowned, took it in his hands, opened it, and sat down on the spot. Luckily, there was a chair downstairs, because it was his wife's diary. Yes, she had decided to keep it at some point, and for some reason she had chosen an ordinary ruled notebook. Anthony looked at the first page. The entry referred to the time when they had just separated. He closed the notebook and hastily, as if it were burning his hands, put it aside. It was private, intimate. He must not and could not read it. It is not good to read other people's diaries, even if one of them belonged to your wife, even if she died long ago. But still, Anthony could not cope with this temptation. He reached for the notebook again. Could it be that she had written about them there? What was she thinking, feeling? Did she realize what a terrible mistake it was, their separation? Anthony leafed through the pages. Here his wife was revealing her experiences. She was truly remorseful for the affair, but also angry that he could not forgive meant he did not love her enough. It was a stream of consciousness, frank and honest, vivid and vague at the same time. But the last entries were not about marriage anymore. They were about pregnancy. And then Anthony read something that made his eyes round with horror. His wife was pregnant with twins. She didn't say a word. She was afraid he would be afraid of such a big responsibility. Natalie confided her fears to the diary. When she got to the hospital, the doctor said she had great risks. "Dad, what are you doing?" tugged Harvey's arm. Anthony shuddered and hastily put the notebook in the box, covered it with the lid. "Oh, just sorting out some old things. Nothing interesting. Why don't you watch the cartoon?" "It ended a long time ago," replied Harvey. "Dad, and you tell a bedtime story about the princess and the scary monster." Anthony realized that he needed to finish reading the diary. It was his way of touching his wife, the memory of her. But this day, he just didn't have the moral strength to do it. And in the morning, he was so absent-minded, he even burned the semolina. The bottom of the pot was blackened. But Harvey was triumphant and said he was gonna have fruit-flavored cornflakes for breakfast. "Are you alive?" snapped Anthony's fingers at the young man in front of him. Above his desk in the office, leaning on the tabletop with the palm of his hand, hovered co-worker and best friend Steve. "What?" "Yeah, everything's great. I was thinking." Anthony tried to concentrate on the computer where there were variants of logos sent by designers, and he had to decide what was the most relevant to the concept of one of the work projects. But what wouldn't come out of his head was what he learned. He didn't understand why the doctors hadn't said there was another baby. Surely he had been stillborn or died soon after, so they had decided to hide it because they were afraid of the foreigner blaming their clinic. That was the only option. Except it didn't make it any easier. Anthony felt a cold, creepy chill run through his skin when he realized that his Harvey had a twin brother who had died, who he couldn't even give a proper burial. And then, suddenly that boy in the Harlequin costume came to mind. "No, man, you're not." Anthony was brought out of his reverie by the clinking of broken china when he dropped his coffee mug. Sleeping on the move, drunk the night before, or zombified by aliens? It was Steve again. Anthony was overthinking for the umpteenth time that day, this time on his lunch break. I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on," Anthony said, bending over to clean up the shards. "This is bad," Steve said, and then resolutely snatched the plastic box of ready-to-eat lunches delivered to the office from a special company out of Anthony's hands and took his friend to a cafe nearby. "So let's stop the stress," Steve said, and took deep, measured breaths in and out, clearly setting an example of how to calm down. "Best friend, tell me what happened." Anthony laid out everything that had happened and added everything he thought. Perhaps even if he were lying on a couch in a psychologist's office right now, he couldn't be more frank than with his best friend. He and Steve knew each other literally from the sandbox. Steve then, at the first meeting, defended a neighbor kid from the bullies who wanted to take away from him Pasaki. And as it happened, they started to stick together at school. But then they separated. Anthony went to university, and Steve began to look for himself. And it would be fine just looking, but he also went abroad. He traveled around the world, mostly hitchhiking. He worked remotely as a blogger, and also, as his relatives said, he was probably doing something illegal. He was too poor, adventurous guy. And that's why when Steve came back a few years ago and got a job as an ordinary programmer, went to the office, everyone thought that he might have gone crazy. Steve, by the way, never stopped the most fantastic rumors from spreading around him. He didn't seem to care about his own reputation at all. But that didn't change the fact that he was a great friend. And about his current life, Steve said that he was just trying out how to him such a style. And if he didn't like it, he'd go away again and go somewhere else. Maybe he'll get a job as a caretaker on an island that drifts off the coast of the New World, or become a kangaroo conservationist in Australia, or go and be a journalist in Cambodia. And worst of all for Steve's inner circle was that it was not clear when he was joking and when he was completely serious. But right now, Steve was dead serious. And when Anthony said that his strange thoughts were, of course, nonsense, he refused to support him in that opinion. All you have to do is talk to Selena. And how? Sighed Anthony, walking up to her and asking if she adopted a boy, because maybe my second son isn't dead and I want to find him. That's about it. Well, there's also the option of genetic testing. All we need to do is get a hair from that boy. It seems to me, Anthony furrowed his brow, that such a procedure requires the consent of the parent. Steve said thoughtfully, but you can pretend that you want to order the test for Harvey. You show up at the lab with hair. Are you crazy? Don't boil over. Steve held his hands up conciliatorily and smiled broadly, just laying out the options. It's kind of mean to take someone else's baby's hair like that. No, I can't do that. I'm just gonna talk to her. And the sooner the better, Anthony sighed, or I'll change my mind. Then let's do it right after work today. She that blonde. Steve was doing something on his smartphone. Oh, our beauty will be at the art gallery opening today. I still don't understand modern art. Think if I get my mom's cat's paws dirty in paint and let him walk on the canvas, it'll be just as good. Why? Here's an idea to earn my bread. Steve, as always, jumped easily from topic to topic and made jokes. Anthony felt strangely as if his friend's dashing self-confidence was contagious. He called his mom and warned her that he would pick Harvey up a couple hours later. And he himself, when the workday was over, almost ran out of the office and took the subway to the right address. Thanks to Steve, the latter was helpful and got a ticket to the opening of the gallery Muse of Zeus, which Anthony presented at the entrance. There were flashes of cameras everywhere, and it looked like a lot of press had flocked to the opening. But there were even more regular visitors, and not ordinary. Steve noticed Selena among several men and women of a special kind. The first stood out with stylish suits with butterflies, and the second with evening dresses. But Selena herself was devoid of any pathos and seemed inappropriately modest and yet elegant for this place. The girl was dressed in a small black dress, classic black pumps, and blonde wavy hair was lifted up, exposing a long neck with a string of pearls. Here she laughed at the words of some fat man in a striped suit he was obviously trying to woo, and headed away, stopping at a painting on which the cubes depicted either a woman or a nightmare. "Good evening," Anthony said, as he stepped up beside her. "Ah, it's you." Selena smiled at him with a bored look. "We need to talk." "I'm sorry, but," she began, but he, flustered as a boy, interrupted her. "You see, my son." And he went on to say everything that was on his mind and soul. It was astonishing to him how the same story that had taken almost an hour with Steve had been. "What am I supposed to do?" Anthony exclaimed in despair. "What do you want?" "The truth," he answered honestly, "but I'm afraid I've confused myself. After all, Selena said she gave birth to the baby herself, and you said she did." Some time ago, Steve, by the way, without asking, but just guessing about his friend's desire, just like a mind reading, collected him a maximum of information about Selena, including downloaded photos of her while she was pregnant, gave a couple of interviews to women's magazines about how to combine business and future motherhood. So there is no doubt now it is just a coincidence, a miracle of nature, and it has ultimately nothing to do with the tragedy in Anthony's family. A few more months flew by. "I'm quitting," Steve said cheerfully one day during a coffee break. "I'm fed up with everything, worse than a bitter radish." "Easy for you to say," grinned Archie, the only man in the firm's accounting department. "Rich, you see, I may be tired too. But I can't quit because I got obligations. Loans, but most importantly to my wife and son. But at least you have a son, Steve said. And me, well, I'll be looking for myself again. And personal life. Maybe I'll never have a family. Why not? Anthony asked. I'm celibate, Steve said grimly. My grandmother saw it on the eve of graduation. It's my karma to meet the wrong girls. I think karma is a little different, and it doesn't go with celibacy, Archie grinned. But that doesn't change the facts. Steve raised his finger with an important look. All right. If I'm unlucky in love, then I'll have to be lucky in something else. One day, Anthony saw Maddie again, but not in the kindergarten, but at the grocery market, standing together in line at a stall with dairy products, cheese, and all that. Oh, why would someone so young be in such trouble? Sighed Maddie. Anthony didn't listen attentively to Maddie as always, as she was always gossiping about people he didn't know personally. But then suddenly his hearing picked up and sharpened the perception of the familiar name Selena. What's wrong? Anthony asked. Oh, you're on ours, Maddie smiled, and this smile said how happy she was to find a grateful listener. You don't know everything. Anyway, remember, they flew to foreign lands to lie on the beach. Well, Selena decided to build some business there. Well, things were not going well there, but they were still going. She thought about whether to leave everything there or sell it again. And then, anyway, Alex was stolen. What? Anthony's heart sank for a moment, and his heart thudded as if something had happened to his own son. Yes, stolen, Maddie said. She went to the beach with him one day and there, someone ran up, grabbed the boy, pushed him into the car, and that's all they saw. Are they looking for him? What do you think? Maddie waved her hands. Everyone who can. Even they say, Selena turned to those voodoo of theirs. And nothing, not a trace. In general, they say, bad business. From this island, everyday boats, yachts, boats depart from the island. If someone stole it, I think they probably took it away right away. No. Anthony thought he was going to faint. But Maddie interpreted his reaction in her own way, deciding that he was just too impressed and, of course, wanted to know all the details. And she gave them. It turned out that at the time of her son's kidnapping, Selena's business was not very important. They even said that she was on the islands, borrowing money from some people. As for Alex's kidnapping, it was not clear why, but certainly not for ransom because they did not make any demands. There was another oddity in all this, namely that once every 2 or 3 days unknown people called Selena and let her listen to the voice of her son. He always said the same thing. Mom, it's okay. I'm fine, Mommy. The calls lasted only a little while. Apparently, the kidnappers were aware that a longer session of cellular communication could help determine their coordinates. It turned out that Selena was simultaneously tormented by the incomprehension of what was happening and with mad, desperate expectation waiting for news from her son. She tried more than once to talk to those people and find out what they wanted, but the standard response on the other side was just to hang up. Finally, Maddie left such a delicious for her, but 1,000 times already passed over topic and began to master another about how stupid it is to take loans for a wedding. I'm sorry, I gotta go. I really have to go. I'll see you later. Anthony turned around on the run and waved. He needed some alone time to think, and a little more time to figure out what to do in this situation. He'd almost forgotten about that arrogant, used to having her life strictly according to a plan and a ruler, that spoiled Selena. Say hello to your parents, Maddie said belatedly to her acquaintance. Back home, the first thing Anthony did was to hug his son tightly, bury his nose in the red swirls of red hair that smelled like fruit and bubblegum-scented baby shampoo. You forgive me, son, if sometimes, offended. Dad, it's okay. Dad, aren't you a werewolf bear? Alex asked seriously as Anthony hugged him tightly as if right now no evil forces could come after him. Hey, enough. What's wrong with you? Nothing, really. Nothing. Anthony couldn't stop his own mind from correlating too vividly the fact that his own son was around and the fact that this other boy was in trouble. Anthony lost sleep. He thought about how much he would give if it could somehow help Selena get her son back. And then he made a decision. What kind of paid vacation? What, I'm going away? Asked Anthony's mom, shocked when he announced to her that he had to leave for a couple of weeks at least due to urgent business. Son, what's wrong? Did you take out a loan and can't pay it back? Did you get involved in something illegal? Are you? You got some girl pregnant and you're running away from responsibility," wailed his mother, clutching at her heart. Anthony sighed. Lying had always been difficult for him, but he couldn't really tell the truth that he intended to go to these islands to sort things out for himself. Could he? At last his mother agreed, when he swore on his own health that none of the reasons she gave had anything to do with reality. And of course, Mom agreed to keep an eye on Harvey. "Do you have a plan?" Steve asked, when Anthony shared his intentions with him, naturally without giving away any details at all. "No. No connections, right?" "No." "So what are you gonna do?" "I don't know, but I can't just sit here with my hands folded. That's the right approach, but a little disastrous. Dementia and courage. I'm sorry, I know from personal experience what I'm talking about. I'd had cases while I was traveling around the world. That's what, friend. I won't let you go alone." "What?" Anthony was amazed. What he heard. Steve grinned. "We're flying together. Otherwise. Anyway, listen to my arguments. I consider you a hero at heart, but in practice, you'll be like a guinea pig in an enclosure with tigers. And secondly, what kind of a friend would I be if I left you to your own devices?" I had to agree, and trusted Steve on a lot of things right from the start. So it was he who was engaged in the selection of the most favorable airline tickets. He even helped to pack, and he also said that he would try to find someone from the old acquaintances who are in the Caribbean islands. They, as Steve said, may be in Jamaica, Cuba, the Cayman Islands. But the distance, there is a short distance, and these people will quickly get there if you need their help. "And who is it?" asked Anthony. "Do you know any hackers and former FBI special agents?" "Who do I know?" Steve winked. "And knowing too much is bad for your nervous system. So just trust me. And don't get discouraged. We'll figure it all out." "And what if we don't?" said Anthony, giving away the extent of his mental anxiety. "What if Alex is never found?" Steve froze over his duffel bag, struggling to fasten the latch, which would not budge due to the sheer volume of luggage. "Don't think about bad things before they happen. I'm not promising you that we, as a couple of superheroes, will come and solve everything, but we really should at least try." Since he had been to India, Anthony had never flown anywhere further than Turkey, where he had an all-inclusive vacation, and so the flight across the old world and the ocean was quite tiring. And when we got off the plane, for a moment suffocated from the humid, soaked by the generous tropical sun heat, saturated with unusual smells, the main of which were the lush green of flowering plants and brackish freshness of the sea. They checked into the hotel, and although Anthony was eager to do something right now, but Steve insisted that the body should be given a few hours break for minimal acclimatization. Otherwise, it would arrange such a thing for them that they would lie in bed instead of heroism. Steve also insisted that his friend should take these days a special vitamin complex again for better acclimatization. "So why are you frozen, as if to answer the exam, and your cheat sheets are falling out of your pockets?" Steve elbowed his friend in the side. They were standing on the sidewalk, and across the street Selena was sitting at a table at a small cafe on the street. "Wait, we need to get our thoughts together." Steve nodded, winked, and then grabbed his friend by the arm and dragged him across the street, running a red light. They barely made it to the giant truck before Steve unceremoniously pushed Anthony closer to the table. "You again," exclaimed Selena as he coughed awkwardly and said hello to her. "I'm sorry, but we need to talk." Anthony started, but Selena jumped up and immediately picked up her purse and started to leave. "Leave me alone." She suddenly froze and looked at Anthony in a way that he could have sworn that if she had, she would have burned him on the spot. "What do you want? Did you kidnap my son? You were talking nonsense back then and now, so it's you." This was a turn of events Anthony was not prepared for, but the situation was saved by Steve, who stepped forward and literally shielded his friend. He quickly spoke, and in a few phrases explained that first, he knows his friend well and Anthony would never do such a thing. Secondly, Anthony would not have enough material resources, that is money, to do such a thing. And thirdly, all signs point to the fact that the kidnapping was committed by someone Selena knows well. "How do you know?" The young woman was specific about the last one. She calmed down a bit and sat back down at the table. Her friend sat down at the same table, having asked permission beforehand. I've looked through all the available material on your case, Steve said. You're a detective. Not in the way one might think, but if you'll give us 5 minutes. All right? 50 minutes, then I'll be able to explain our plan somehow. Oh, Selena exclaimed. She gulped down a glass of cold water, then took a paper napkin and carefully blotted her eyes. Anthony's background thought recognized she was an amazing woman. He had no doubt that she loved her son, was suffering from what had happened, but how on earth does she manage to hold on? She's still beautiful. So you have a plan? I mean, the police don't. Neither do the detectives I hired. But you do. Who the hell are you? There he is. Steve poked Anthony in the shoulder. The man who recently found out he'd been cheated. Can you imagine the state he's in? He thought he had one son, and then it turned out there were two, and the second one is dead. But it's not certain. Because the next few days were spent on the fact that Steve was calling someone, writing to someone, and digging through documents. Anthony, at this time, he reminded of some hacker from a Hollywood movie, and he would compare himself to a useless assistant of the main character who gets in the way and only hinders to move towards the goal. You should go for a walk, Steve told him, when Anthony once again hovered over his shoulder and asked, "What are the numbers flashing on the screen? I don't want to go out. When I'm done and it's time to act, which I really hope it is, I'm going to need you fresh and not in a state of boiled broccoli, so out." Steve pointed to the door with a smile. "Go out with Selena, get some air, talk." "Talk about what?" "Not about the subject of our case. About life. You can even go on a field trip. Anyway, have fun, guys. I'll be back by 8 o'clock and hopefully I'll be able to give you some results." Anthony could only agree. He knocked on Selena's room. They were staying in the same hotel and gave her the words, well, almost all of Steve's words. And Selena, to his surprise, agreed. "That's how we didn't catch the dragon lizard." Selena finished her story about how she and Alex had vacationed on the islands a couple of years ago and walked in the reserve. Anthony and Selena walked along the promenade. It was an unusually warm day, even for these parts. How do you manage? It's a lot of work. At first, it was very difficult. I didn't have time to have a proper lunch or wash my hair, let alone sleep. But then, I somehow learned to plan everything, to prioritize. Now my son is the main thing for me. I want to give him the best. A happy childhood. A mother should be there for her son, Anthony said, but he immediately shut up awkwardly and even apologized. The last thing he wanted to do was to stir up misunderstandings. Besides, he could reproach himself for similar things because he was also lost at work, although to have enough for a modest life, you could work in less, but he, like Selena, wanted to give his son the best. And the best, of course, cost money. When this is all over, Selena stopped, turned to the pier. "If all goes well, I'll take a vacation. I'll give myself a break. I'll spend time with my son." They were silent for a while. The fresh wind was playing with the girl's light azure scarf, which complemented her elegant white cotton dress. Anthony thought for the umpteenth time about how beautiful she was. "It's going to be okay. Trust me, it's going to be fine." "How can you know that?" She turned to him and was suddenly so close that he was enveloped by the sweet, floral scent of her perfume. "I just know," he said. The sun that was beating directly into his eyes forced him to squint, and because of that, the appearance of the young woman standing in front of him became a little blurred, as if unreal, as if she were made of mirages and her own unfulfilled hopes. No, Selena was not at all like Natalia. They were quite different. A vendor of boiled corn walked past them, pushing a creaky cart in front of him, and the obsession lifted. Anthony gave himself a mental shove, wondering what such almost romantic sentiments were now, when they were engaged in such important business, when they were, in fact, wandering in nightmarish darkness, guided only by their hopes. And even if everything really does end well, they're so different. Different as different planets, galaxies. Their suns are similar in appearance, but nothing can be between him and this woman. It's simply impossible. It would be a real madness. And Anthony promised himself not to even think about it anymore in any context. But he wasn't sure he would succeed. They turned away from the promenade into the depths of the streets. There were tourists walking around, and all the free space was occupied by stores, firms that offered excursions, and cafes. It was noisy, crowded, deafeningly colorful, but it was worth admitting that it all had its charm. Watch out. Anthony put his arm around Selena's waist in a strong gesture and drew her to him, literally pulling her aside at the last moment because some daredevil in a car decided to cut off the waiting time in the traffic by driving on the sidewalk. "Thank you," she exhaled hotly into his neck. She gently pressed her palms against his chest and pulled away. "Thank you." They were about to go back to the hotel because the sun was scorching mercilessly. But Anthony, wanting to at least somehow distract and entertain Selena, offered her to stay at the shop where they sold shells, beads, and crafts from them. But the main thing here was sitting in a cage talking parrot. A flock of tourists gathered here and laughed at the phrases in a mixture of broken English and local language, which the parrot gave out. "Alex." Suddenly, Selena clenched her hand with her fingers. "It's him." "What?" Anthony didn't understand, confused, and started to turn his head, but there were no children even remotely similar to Selena's son nearby. Finally, he realized what she was trying to point out. There was a woman standing a couple of meters away from them, talking to someone on the phone. She covered her other ear with her palm, probably to hear the other person better over the hum of the street. "What?" Anthony asked again, because he didn't understand anything. "The bracelet, her bracelet." Selena trembled and pointed at the stranger. Anthony took a closer look at the hand of this overweight, about 45 years old lady of European appearance. There was indeed a bracelet, a colorful rag bracelet, colorfully bright and decorated with all sorts of pendants. It was some beads and tiny plastic figures. Alex had a toy, a keychain. Selena explained hastily. He wore it everywhere. On his jacket, on his backpack. It was a whale, casaca. He got it once at a fast food place, you know. Kids' lunches sometimes have surprises, little things. His keychain. She has it. Anthony frowned at all. In his opinion, a keychain, especially one from a fast food place, must have existed in the world in hundreds or even thousands of copies. So it was strange to think that this foreign woman had something to do with Alex's disappearance. "Calm down," Anthony said affectionately but firmly. "I'll go to her now and just ask her a question." Delicately and gently. "Wait a minute. I know her. She used to work as an animator at the hotel. She used to play with the kids," said Selena. Leaving the trembling Selena in place, he moved forward. And then the woman put the phone away, seemingly finishing the conversation. They met eyes. And then Anthony realized she saw over his shoulder Selena. And the expression on the woman's face changed. She recognized her. "Wait," he said. But the woman turned around and walked briskly away, speeding away. She was just running away. "Come back. Stop." Anthony didn't hesitate to follow. It seemed to him that Selena too. He didn't turn around, afraid to miss her in the crowd. Meanwhile, the distance between them was increasing. Anthony cursed, panting from running. "What the hell is this? Get the thief!" he shouted, hoping that someone would help him. His breath hitched, and he almost lost her. But the realization came like lightning. And it wasn't normal for her to run away like that. It's not normal at all. Why? He just walked up to her and maybe, as a normal person would think, he wanted to ask her for directions. No, there's something wrong here. And from the looks of it, she has something to do with Alex's kidnapping, which means he has no chance or right to let her go. The busy streets ended and they turned into some deserted alleys that seemed to be destined for demolition. Anthony froze and listened. The stomping of the woman had died down just then. It did not fade away gradually, as if she had moved away from him, but it broke off as if she had decided to hide. And there was a place to hide. The doors to some of the buildings were ajar, as if they had been broken open by the local homeless or thrill-seeking teenagers. Which meant she could be anywhere. Anthony swallowed hard. She could easily fool him here. Who knows, maybe she knows these places well. She could leave quietly. Or, another thought flashed, she could hit him over the head with a brick altogether. Theoretically. "Listen to me, I just want to talk," he shouted into the void. And then suddenly the woman turned abruptly and was a couple of steps away from him. He rushed to her, she to the side. It was strange, but in an instant Anthony's strength increased, and he just slammed her into a pile of wooden crates piled on. He didn't immediately realize where that low, growling rumble was coming from, and then he realized it was the sound he was making. And it was also clear that the mysterious fugitive was looking at him with eyes widened with terror. Anthony was about to open his mouth to ask a question, but then there was a screech of brakes in the alley. A motorcycle entered the alley, from which Steve jumped. Behind him sat Selena. The friend rushed forward and literally snatched the prey from Anthony's hands. In fact, Anthony had previously thought of this friend as a peaceful man, and he certainly doesn't hit women. But then he firmly pinched the stranger's arm behind her back and pushed her against the wall. "Gotcha." "What? How?" mumbled Anthony. "Hey, take it easy, buddy." "Oh yeah, it's about time you got delicate," Steve growled. It turned out that it was a coincidence that he came to the same street where Selena and Anthony were, just a minute after Anthony had given chase. It was a happy coincidence. Steve was looking for Alex's mother and best friend to tell them the important news that couldn't wait until tonight. It turned out that right after Alex's kidnapping, one of the animators had quit the hotel where Selena was staying with her son. Steve had time to talk to many people in general, representing himself as a private detective who was investigating, and about the incident, by the way, knew a lot of people in the area, because it was a high-profile case of kidnapping a child from a foreign woman in broad daylight. That's why in many cases Steve meant sympathy and people share information. "When did you have time to do that?" Anthony marveled. "You just sleep until lunchtime," winked Steve. So he managed to find out something interesting. One of the other animators, a young girl named Katie, shared that she thought it was strange how another animator who was this particular captured woman, whose name was Bella, once took out a smartphone and began to take pictures of someone else's child, that is, Alex. It was very strange and not normal at all. But the girl was a trainee, scared, and so she didn't tell anyone about it. But now one thing was adding up to another. "So, are you gonna be nice about it?" Steve growled. "Hey, maybe. Let's call the police," exclaimed Anthony, who was seriously so freaked out by his friend's behavior, even though everything was going on, but seriously so freaked out. "Oh, we'll call them, but only this one will probably play it, so that we'll know the truth for a very long time. Or maybe she'll make bail and run away." "Okay, lady, 2 options. You tell us what you had to do with the kidnapping, and we go our separate ways. Or, and you know," Steve lowered his voice, "I see the place is deserted, so we can set up inside for a conversation." "I'm just an animator. You don't understand," Bella shrieked. "No, I understand," Steve grinned. "You were paid by someone to find a child that someone wanted. And then, I suppose, you found out where he and his mom were. You leaked the information for a fee, right? They seemed like easy prey to you, didn't they? Single mom and son. Except that sometimes those little darlings have friends." "Who are you people?" Bella almost cried. "Well, I'm, let's just say, a man without principles. And this guy," Steve nodded at Anthony, "he's Selena's ex. And you know why they broke up? Because he had a relapse and went back to the loony bin. He has trouble controlling his aggression, and he's got a certificate. So if anything, he won't even get arrested." Anthony's eyes widened at Steve's lies. In general, he, because Steve spoke in English, did not understand everything, but even understood enough to realize Steve, it turns out, can be frighteningly convincing. "See the scar on his arm?" Steve abruptly turned his prey to face him and pushed him back, shook him and pointed to Anthony's forearm, where the bite marks of a dog attacked many years ago were white. He was the one who bit himself. Anthony rounded his eyes even more. Steve was talking nonsense, but judging by the way the animator woman's face turned white, she was inclined to believe it all. "You know, there are temporary dentures for teeth, such, under the vampires and werewolves to dress up. So he once bought one of these. Is not made of plastic, but of steel. Mom and Dad, afraid of how he did not chew up the neighbors, locked the guy in his room. But he found a way out. He almost chewed his own arm off. And you know, he gets off especially easy on a full moon, and it's a waxing moon. But," mumbled already sniffing nose-scared animator, "it's not night. It's white day. And you want to test how evil a day can be? Let's do it. At the same time, we'll keep you here until night and conduct, so to speak, a comparative experiment." "I'm so angry," Anthony exclaimed. He felt like an idiot a little, But he also realized that now it was necessary to play along with his friend. "Give it to me," he practically roared and held out his hands, fingers curled in a monster-like grip to Bella. She shrieked, struggling in Steve's strong grip. "No, please, I'll tell you everything. Yes, I was paid. They were looking for the boy. They knew he was with his mother in the hotel where I work. They thought I could help." "And why did they think that?" Steve asked. "Because I've been in trouble with the law before," the woman sobbed, "for theft. I really needed the money. I have. I don't give a damn what you've got," bellowed Steve. "What did you tell them? Where's the boy?" "I swear," the prisoner shrieked again. "They just wanted to make sure it was the same kid. They said to watch, to see if mother and son had some kind of regular walking route. And then, when everything happened, they met with me and paid me the money. The pendant, the caring." Steve grimly demanded further explanation. "How did you get it?" "You see, this may seem strange, but I'm superstitious," dutifully explained the woman, "and I always, anyway, I collect amulets in difficult situations in life. They keep me safe from evil. Well, let's just say it didn't do you much good this particular time. I saw that the boy had a backpack with a keychain and asked him to give it to me. That day, Alex took his backpack with him," Selena said. "He put a chocolate bar, his favorite car, a bottle of drinking water. Let me hit her." The angry mother rushed forward, and Anthony had to make a lot of effort to catch her. "I never saw them again after that. The boy, your son, he was scared, but he seemed to have been treated well," Bella continued to explain in a hurry. "Wow," grinned Steve, "of course. It's nothing like that to kidnap a little boy, is it? The main thing is that he seems to have been treated well, and why he was kidnapped, it doesn't matter." But there, you could see that the woman was fidgeting. She was afraid to say anything, but she was also afraid of those in whose power she was right now. Nothing bad should happen to him. "I was told that his father took him. He took him away because his mother wouldn't let him see him." "What?" exclaimed Selena. "But my husband wouldn't go for that. He doesn't need it at all." "I'm only saying what I know," said the animator. "There was such a red-haired man. He spoke with an Irish accent." "Celine, are you sick?" Anthony gently supported Celine, who seemed ready to faint. "I'm fine. But this, how did he know? Why would he do that? I don't understand. Can't we just stop it already?" Anthony turned to his friend in a pleading tone. "Can't we call the police already?" "Come on," Steve nodded. "Wait." The animator jerked in his unrelenting grip. "You said we'd split up." "Sorry, sweetheart," grinned Steve. "But this time you're really in trouble." All the formalities that followed the call to the local police took until late afternoon. And yet, despite what they had learned, the small group gathered in the evening in a less than enthusiastic and generally depressed state. "I mean, what do you mean they can't do anything now?" Anthony didn't understand. Clearly, the boy had already been kidnapped by his father. "And the proof?" moaned Selena, "especially since this fool was playing silent. They have no proof, which means that while they will sort it out, while they will contact the detectives in Ireland, it will take forever. And in the meantime, my son will be in his hands. And if he decides to hide him somewhere, I might never see Sasha again." Anthony sighed as he realized that the situation was really serious. Selena had already managed to tell them that the boy's real father came from a very rich, powerful family. He is a millionaire, a powerful, violent man. Apparently, he was furious that his ex-girlfriend hid the pregnancy from him and intended to restore his paternity rights like this, punishing her by separating her from the child. It was really stupid, hopeless to hope that it will be possible to solve something quickly in an official, legal way. "But there are always options," Steve said thoughtfully. "You know where he lives, don't you?" "Yes," answered Selena, who had regained control of herself and was now wiping away her tears, smearing her mascara. "And you said that in all likelihood he took the child to his estate," Steve continued. "So there's only one option. We have to fly to Ireland." "What's your plan?" Anthony asked. "My plan is simple," replied his best friend. "We'll return the boy to his mother and maybe punch someone in the face." No, Anthony didn't think his trip would be anything easy. He was a realist, but he couldn't have guessed it would turn out like this. Now he felt like a hero of some Hollywood action movie, and he would like very much that the ending of this story was a happy ending, not a thriller. In fact, it was shocking how Steve quickly came up with a plan of what to do before. Where had the laughing guy from the office gone? It seemed that now Steve had returned to his native adventurous element, and Anthony was no longer so unsure of what his relatives said that Steve was involved in some shady dealings abroad. Otherwise, how could he have such knowledge in certain areas and, more importantly, specific connections? And he had connections because they were suspiciously quick to get visas to Ireland, and also because by the time the plane landed on the island of Green Hills and Elves, Steve outlined his plan and said that his friends had already prepared everything. They would help. Anthony didn't bother to specify what kind of friends. He decided that the most important thing now was to get Alex back. So he would follow the current circumstances and at the same time follow the folk wisdom that you know less and sleep better. Or what if he finds out something unnecessary and Steve will have to kill him for it? Ha 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 ha. Very funny and a joke, of course. I make a governess look like a ballerina. Anthony grimaced as Steve put the final touch of square glasses on his nose. Anthony hardly recognized himself in the mirror, visually, because of the clothes he had picked out, baggy pants, plaid shirt, and knitted vest. He had added more than 1 pound of weight. Not a governess, but rather a tutor, a teacher of etiquette, of manners. What a horror. Look on the bright side. But now you're fulfilling your grandmother's dream. Steve tried to cheer him up with a joke. She wanted you to choose an intelligent profession, and what could be more intelligent than a teacher of this kind for the scion of a noble family, descendants of persons close to Queen Victoria. But you've chosen a different cover. Anthony sighed. You're a security system specialist. Because I need to have access to them. Selena could have come with us. I need her somewhere else so we can make a quick getaway if things don't go according to plan. Steve reminded sternly, okay, we need to move. You and I have less time than Cinderella in a fairy tale. If we don't make it in a couple of hours and we're exposed, we're probably going to get killed, at best. Keep those details to yourself, will you? Anthony grinned wryly. What did you put me up to? Do you know how much they'd pay for this in Ireland? I'm afraid the boy's father will deal with us first, so we won't live to see the official justice. I see. All right, let's go. Steve's plan was to briefly infiltrate the estate and steal Alex. Selena was to wait at the agreed location in a car. Circumstances seemed to be going well, and it turned out that Alex's etiquette teacher was supposed to arrive at the estate that day, but he was sick and couldn't. And then, Steve set up a phony phone call so that the owners of the estate thought he was coming after all, and it was supposed to be Anthony. Steve was going to enter under the guise of an unscheduled check of the security system, saying that it could be hacked remotely by hackers and therefore everything had to be checked immediately. And he was going to cut off the part of the alarm system, the part that was responsible for the gate, so that the 3 of them, having taken Sasha, could leave unhindered. And when they were on the spot, Anthony realized that he was more afraid in his imagination, and now he was acting as if on automatic. Here he introduced himself to the butler. This family had a real butler, a gaunt man with ice blue, very suspicious eyes. He volunteered to personally escort the teacher to Alex's room. Steve entered the manor 20 minutes later and was immediately admitted to the security system of the whole territory without any questions. Alex, Anthony called softly to the boy as the butler walked out. The boy was sitting in a corner on the rug among the scattered toys and was clearly distressed. He raised his eyes to the entrant and immediately looked away. Alex, Anthony approached cautiously. Don't be afraid. I'm your mom's friend. I came to pick you up. Mommy? The boy came to life. I want my mom. He almost roared. We'll go to her now. But you're gonna help me, okay? It's a game, okay? You like to play, don't you? We need to be as quiet as mice and then we'll win in. I'm not a baby anymore, Alex said. Don't do this to me. You're not here to play. You're trying to get me back to my mom, aren't you? And that uncle took me away. Anthony thought about that boy. He's as serious as his son. They're so much alike, aren't they? Yes, they are. But to make it work, you must be quiet. So let's go. He was ready to take the boy by the hand and take him to the agreed place in the garden, its far part, where one of the gates of the estate was located. But then the door opened and an old man in a wheelchair entered. Behind him walked the butler. "Well, young man, I have come to personally witness your success in your studies," the old man said sternly. Anthony froze, as if struck by thunder, because it was the head of the family, that is, Alex's grandfather, a man, according to Steve, extremely harsh and even cruel. His name was Stuart, and they weren't supposed to see him at all. Alex looked pleadingly at Anthony. "Well, we're just learning," he mumbled. "What did you say?" the old man asked. "Your accent, it's terrible. Patrick," he turned to the butler, "I told you that the teacher should be a true Englishman, not a foreigner." However, the old man looked at Anthony with interest. "Perhaps your intelligence compensates for the nightmarish pronunciation. So come on, what have you been through so far?" "Nothing yet," answered Anthony, covering himself with cold sweat. "I've just arrived. So I have the honor of witnessing the first lesson that will finally start my grandson becoming a true gentleman. So let's begin. Tell this young man how a duke should behave in the presence of a prince of the blood." Anthony opened and closed his mouth. "There you go." The old man arched his eyebrow questioningly. "You've definitely been caught. It's all gone." And then the fire alarm sounded. Anthony had a split second to make up his mind and grabbed the child by the arm and dragged him out of the room. "Hurry up. Let's go. It's not safe." Strange, the head of the clan pulled the air with his nose. No smoke. Maybe it's Molly overcooking the bacon in the kitchen again. Will they fix the ventilation or not? "Okay, James," he waved his hand. "Take me out of the house. Let's have a lesson in the fresh air." Anthony thought that now it would all work out to run out of the mansion and on through the garden, where the roses were planted in a maze forward to the back gate. Here, almost there. And suddenly he saw Steve. And he wasn't alone. He was in the company of several stout fellows, and a glance at them was enough to realize that they were the guards of the manor, and they realized that strangers had broken in. Anthony froze. The forces were clearly not equal. They had been caught after all. And as they were led back to the house, and then through its museum-esque corridors, Anthony was particularly worried about why he wasn't scared. He should be. Alex, by the way, they wanted to give him to the governesses who came running from the house. But the boy, without tears, but stubbornly grasped Anthony's hand and said that he would not go anywhere. And if they dragged him by force, he'd do what he'd done last Tuesday. Anthony didn't know what he'd done, but from the look on the governesses' faces, it was a big deal. So the three of us went in, and finally, they entered the study. There were bookshelves on the walls, from floor to ceiling. A huge fireplace in which you could roast a boar, a desk of dark wood, armchairs with scarlet upholstery and carved backrests and legs. In the center of the room sat on his wheelchair old man and frowned. "Will someone please explain to me what's going on? Who are you people?" "They are Mom's friends," said Alex. "There he is." The boy pointed at Anthony, her friend for sure, "and the other uncle is nice too." "And what kind of friends are they that pretend to be?" "Oh," sighed the old man, raising his hand to his heart. A concerned butler rushed to him, but he waved him away. "Sir," Anthony appealed to him, "please listen to us. We can explain everything." "And what will you explain?" "Did this." The old man glanced at Sasha and obviously for his sake softened the words he was about to say. "Was this lady not paid enough? Why did you decide to separate me from my grandson?" "What do you mean?" Anthony didn't understand. "Who paid?" "My son," said the old man. "The mother refused to give up the boy." "Not true," exclaimed Alex. I was stolen." "What?" Stuart was now shocked. And then Alex confessed that when he was kidnapped, a man named Herbert Frayne not only introduced himself as his real father, but also threatened the boy that something very bad might happen to his mother. Yes, something very bad might happen to him too, if he talked too much. Herbert told the boy in the presence of his grandfather to keep quiet more and to support the version that his mother had agreed, in fact, to sell them, abandoned him, accepting a generous compensation from his father, who was so eager to get a son. But now Alex was no longer afraid to tell the truth. "My son, my Herbert," the old man said in a colorless voice. "No, of course I knew that he had grown up to be something else." He again, in view of the child's presence, refrained from strong words, but to do such a thing. "If you're lying, boy." "I'm not lying. Ask anyone." Alex exclaimed in despair. "I'm telling the truth. My mom loves me. She's looking for me. But why would Herbert do such a thing? Shook his head. The old man, he never aspired to be a father. I'm afraid, sir, he doesn't aspire now, James said suddenly, and all eyes turned to him. I was going to tell you all about it, sir. But you weren't well and I was waiting for the right moment. Speak, damn you. The old man thumped the floor with the cane he held in his lap, judging by it that he could sometimes rise from his chair, though with difficulty. The butler, still holding himself as if he were not talking about a conspiracy in the family, but about the change of dishes for a dinner party, told what he knew. It turned out that he had accidentally overheard a conversation between Herbert and one of the family's lawyers, and Herbert was talking about how he had a cunning plan. The fact was that the head of the family had repeatedly threatened to disinherit Herbert for his disgusting behavior. And then he, having learned that his former friend had a child, which, coincidentally, was born shortly after their parting and was the same redhead, decided to kidnap him and put him on the estate, and also to get Selena's parental rights terminated. The next part of the devious plan was that Alex's grandfather, imbued with love for his grandson, would of course have to make him the main heir. While Herbert would be able to act as the boy's guardian for years to come, he would be able to administer an estate worth many millions of dollars. What a sneaky and cunning man, grinned the old man unhappily. Well, that proves his nature once again. Anthony breathed a sigh of relief. He couldn't believe it was so simple. And he asked so they can leave freely. After all, since everything is clear, the child should naturally return to his mother. And what about the fact that he has more than just her? Squinted the old man. You want to take away my grandson so easily? No way. If I fail to bring up a normal son, at least with my grandson, I will not repeat the same mistakes. But before, he grinned, I have to make sure, and I wanted to do it before the new details were revealed. I want to make sure that Alex is really my grandson. Genetic testing. That's it. Anthony swallowed hard. Mind you, do you think we can just be bought? Anthony was indignant. I think it's rude to interrupt elders, and besides, believe me, I know the truth. Everything in this world has its price, said the old man with pressure, and Anthony thought that there was some threat in his words. If the test shows that Alex is my grandson, continued Stewart, in that case, his mother and I will agree on how I will take part in the boy's life. He will definitely benefit from that. And by the way, let me warn you just in case. Don't try any more tricks and run away. What's the point? The options I'd offer are really beneficial for you, or rather for the boy and his mother. But refusal to meet me halfway, the head of the aristocratic Irish family said, it can, I'm sorry, lead to trouble. Steve and Anthony looked at each other. They had already shown courage, and now, without exchanging a word, they had decided that taking a risk and fighting right now would only hurt them. So Steve dialed Selena's number. The young woman couldn't hold back her tears when she was able to hug her son again. And to Anthony's surprise, she took everything the old man told her quite calmly, and somehow even submissively. All she said was that she didn't want Herbert to come near her or her son in any way. I will not have him in this house myself, said the landlord firmly. The wretch, by the way, has run away. Perhaps he senses that his shameless deceit is about to be discovered. It took 2 days to wait for the results. Anthony now understood nothing at all. I mean, he did, but it seemed to him that the real world had taken on a very fantastic shape. Such changes were disturbing. What other surprises could the future hold? His mother called from home, asking where he was missing, and demanded that he come back soon. Because how much can you rest and solve your personal affairs when you have a family and a small son? Anthony vowed that he would be back soon, and lied, of course, that everything was fine with him. The results are in, said the head of the family. The old man invited Anthony, Steve, Selena. His loyal butler was also present. Stewart looked very gloomy. Alex is not my grandson, he said, and Anthony could have sworn that the old man was ready to cry and only by an effort of will restrained himself. But it also meant that they could breathe a sigh of relief that nothing was keeping them here, so the whole story was wrapped up safely. However, I have something else to say, and so that you don't have to take my word for it, I realize it's difficult. Here, Stewart handed Selena some papers. What's this? She asked. Remember when I said I needed your blood samples to be as accurate as possible? I mean, well, the complexities of modern technology. The old man waved his hand and sighed heavily. I'm sorry, my dear, to have to tell you this, but to keep silent about it would be monstrous. But you, Alex isn't your child either. What? Selena only staggered and didn't fall because Anthony supported her. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. That's impossible. Read the results, Stuart said. No, no. Alex is my child, Selena whispered in a colorless voice, but her fingers were already opening the envelope with the documents. She read them, and then silently settled back in her chair. Steve also looked at the papers, but if Anthony could still understand spoken English, he was not good at reading papers, especially scientific and medical ones. And it was just as Stuart had said. However, before Selena could, as they called it, go mad with grief, he said something else important. He said that he had enough connections and influence to find out in the shortest possible time what had happened to her real child and where Alex had come from. But that, he warned, would take time. And then he invited everyone to stay with him, and they agreed. There was no word from Herbert. Meanwhile, Anthony didn't know what to say to Selena, how to comfort her. He was in shock, but then he decided to talk to Stuart. He told him his story, and feeling his heart ready to stop with excitement, he asked if it was possible to order a paternity test for him. Stuart said he could, and soon the results came back. Hello, Anthony said. He walked out onto the veranda where Selena was sitting. The sun was setting over the rose garden, and today's sunset was unusually beautiful, except no one cared about it. Have you told him yet? No, sighed Anthony. I don't know how. I was so hopeful just a little while ago. I thought I'd go mad with happiness, but now I'm afraid I'll ruin his life with it. I understand. Selena turned away as he sat down next to her and nervously interlocked her fingers. I loved him, and I love him now. But what do I do about the fact that I'm not his mother? How do I go on with my life? I don't know, Anthony answered honestly. I only know that I'm not going to do what you're afraid I might do. Tell me in detail, she asked. I'm not going to take him away from you and drive him away, separate you. I understand, you're his mom. You raised him. But Selene, I'm his father. And he has a twin brother. Selena, why won't you look at me? I don't know, she exclaimed and turned around, tears glistening in her eyes. You just can't understand how bad I feel. He wanted to say that he couldn't, it was natural, but he was willing to help, if only he knew how. But they were interrupted. It was James. The butler said the master of the manor wanted to speak to them. Stuart looked this time, just awful, his eyes. There was so much coldness and pain in them, but he held on. He started by telling Selena the results of the investigation. Selena's labor was very difficult. Her life was barely saved. But the child, her boy, could not be saved. At that time, she knew who his real father was, but did not admit it to her husband. At that time, their marriage was already falling apart, and the man decided that if there was a child in the family, then it would save everything. And when the doctor came out to him and said that his wife was unconscious, they were trying to save her, but the baby, alas, was not saved. He himself proposed this option. He began to insist that they should find the baby anywhere, a newborn boy, and that they should tell Selena that her baby had survived. He paid a huge sum of money, and coincidentally, on the same day, Natalie's other patient happened to be in the clinic. She died, and the doctors took one of her sons. Anthony listened to all of this, and he was shocked. Steve expressed sympathy, and it was noticeable that he too was uncomfortable to be present at this scene of revealing the whole truth. Anthony feared that Selena would become hysterical, but the young woman remained calm. To be more precise, she didn't show how bad she felt. She only said that she was grateful to Stuart for helping her. He said that he had probably done all he could do now, and he added that now he needed to mind his own business. He said he had to attend to the son's funeral. That same morning came the news that Herbert had been in a car accident on a mountain road in Italy. And Steve, Anthony, Selena, and Alex could leave. Steve, by the way, supported his friend in the fact that Selena had really become a mom to Alex. Anthony realized that now his life and the lives of his sons were turned upside down. Nothing would ever be the same again. He talked a lot more with Selena, and they decided that right now Sasha doesn't need can't know the shocking truth. Let him grow up. In the meantime, let him just know, think as before, that Selena is his mom and Anthony is her friend. Let him think that he and Harvey are just very much alike. Surely things would be much simpler if the boys would find out the truth now. But that would have been ruthless to their immature young minds, their little hearts. And there were so many questions to be decided. For example, they decided that Selena couldn't bring Sasha to visit Anthony at home because his relatives would have questions. They decided that they would meet as a family often, but privately to keep the secret. At least a few more years would have to go by. Selena, realizing that there was no business on the islands either, decided to return home, or rather almost home. She settled in a neighboring town to the one where Anthony lived and decided to start her own business there. Steve, on the other hand, was missing. Not in a bad way, but the guy decided to leave and travel around the world, now as an independent photographer who can sell his pictures to different publications and bloggers. Anthony honestly told his friend that it's all great, but it would be good to think about one day settling down in one place, having a family. Steve promised to think about it. Do you think we'll be able to tell them soon? Selena asked thoughtfully. It had been 5 years since they had first met. All together with Alex and Harvey, they were spending summer vacations in a rented country house surrounded by a beautiful garden. Anthony and Selena were sitting on the veranda, watching the boys scurrying around the garden. I'm scared, Selena confessed, that Alex will stop loving me when he finds out, that he won't forgive the deception. You're wrong, believe me. Anthony took her hand reassuringly. He's a great guy. He'll understand. You know, I think it's time to talk about it soon. The boys are all ready. They're so much alike. They're starting to figure things out. Will you be around when we talk? Of course. Anthony smiled. We're family. I'm sorry. For what? She smiled back. You're right. Over the years, we've all gotten so close. Can I ask you a personal question? Have you never met anyone? Actually, I have, he replied after a brief pause. She's an amazing woman. Kind, smart, strong, funny. Oh, Selena turned away and took her hand away. I hope you'll be happy. I might be. The thing is, I've never asked her out yet, but I think it's time I did. She turned her face toward him, catching the change in tone, and her emerald green eyes opened wide. Are you serious? Does it look like I'm joking? Unless you got someone. No, I'm lonely. Now she took his hand. I guess she's not lonely anymore. Mom, said Alex, running up to the veranda. Dad, said Harvey, who came with him, we need to talk. Why do we look so much alike? When we go out together, everyone says we're like twins. Anthony and Selena looked at each other. It seemed that the moment had come for that very conversation, and they believed that after it, the relationship between them and their children would only get stronger and better. They knew for sure that their sons would accept the whole truth and understand it correctly.